Hey guys, I'm Yuruzi. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Was in Kingdom Hearts. So my name is Uzumaki Naruto. My dream is to be Hokage, but I'm not there yet. But with a demon in my navel I have work to do. Not only that, but now I got this giant key and this destiny. Perfect. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 11, Mornings Filled with Meetings. Naruto walked on a familiar platform, standing once more in a vast, black abyss. He looked around curiously, eyes scanning for something, anything. But there was nothing. "Ah, damn, not again," he mumbled, the keyblade flashing into existence in his hand once more. Voice? Hello? Voice, you there? So, you made it. A smooth, silky voice startled Naruto, making him jump. He turned around, jaw dropping at the sight before him. The woman looked about Iam's age, with pale, deathly white skin that emphasized the fiery red hair hanging down from her head to her waist. It spilled over her voluptuous figure, barely encased in a skin-tight black kimono. But her face. The woman's eyes were blood-red and feline, while her cheeks were defined by whisker marks, just like his own. Naruto tried to form words, but none came to mind. "Tell me, brat. How did you like that taste I gave you?" she asked, her melodic voice curling around him like steel chains, wrapped in silk. This woman had power, that much was obvious to the blonde ninja. "Tea taste?" he murmured back nervously, as the woman licked her lips with a feral smile. "Yes. Taste. A mere drop of my power. Through that weapon you wield." She held out her hand, long, razor-sharp fingers opening. A red flash of light, and Naruto's eyes widened. The woman held out a keyblade. But it was that bright red, cruel one that had seemed to burn. Even now, he could feel pain, as though sparks were nipping at his heart. The woman held out the red keyblade and smiled languidly. "Take it," she crooned. "Take it. It can make all your dreams come true. Anything you want will be at your fingertips." Naruto felt his hand rise of his own volition. The curved, scarlet keyblade inched closer, closer. Clang! Gah! The woman cried out, holding her empty hand with a pained hiss. In Naruto's hands was his keyblade, shining in its humble glory. The blonde smirked. "You think I don't know who you are? Kyubi?" The woman snarled, her eyes glowing red. "Fool! You would deny my power? For what? That paltry stick you carry? You tried to wipe out my village. You've made my life a living hell. Plus, I know what I felt when I was using your chakra. I'm not about to let you have control over my life." Naruto bellowed. "You have more than enough already." The Kyubi smirked. "Very well, brat. Just be warned. You cannot escape me. And there will be another time when you need my power." She was instantly gone, and the keyblade refused to warn Naruto of her presence. Even as he felt hot breath against his ear that made him shiver. "And someday, you will be mine." Crash! Ow! Son of a dash! Naruto grimaced. He'd fallen, tangled in the sheets, again, to the floor. With a sigh he summoned the keyblade and glared at the weapon. "Am I ever going to get a good night's sleep with you around?" Nara was among the laziest of Konoha ninja, he wouldn't contest it too troublesome. At the same time, he was also among the most observant. There were few things that attracted his curiosity like puzzles, for the simple reason that if they were solved, things were much simpler. And right now, the puzzle facing him was one Yamanaka Ino. First, she becomes more serious about training than she did in the academy, when before she had no desire to. Sasuke-kun doesn't like butch women. This led to her to nag Chuji and himself nearly unrelentingly. Shikamaru occasionally humored her and whipped out his shadows, while Chuji tried to catch her with his family jutsus, but she was never satisfied. Granted, this was not very unusual in of itself, but the reasons Ino had for nagging had changed significantly. Finally, she had taken to practicing in the woods, alone, and during the meetings after missions always with that unusual quarterstaff she'd begun carrying around. If figuring out the puzzle that was Yamanaka Ino's recent behavior, Shikamaru had long ago decided that trying to resolve the entire Ino puzzle, along with the puzzle of women in general, was impossible, would allow him to get some peace, then by God he was going to figure it out. This was why Shikamaru had decided to spoil a perfectly good afternoon to follow the blonde out into the woods. Despite her busybody nature, he noted with a smirk, she really had bad situational awareness. The clearing she was in was near some of the main training grounds, but extremely isolated. She'd taken out her staff and seemed to be meditating with it. Shikamaru frowned, and settled in for a long wait. So troublesome. Sleep, said a small, childlike voice. Shikamaru tried to turn and see who had spoken, but his brain decided that the command was a very good one to obey. Humph, thought he could sneak up on me, Ino said with a grin, as Vivi used his float ability to bring himself and Shikamaru to the ground, gently setting the boy onto the ground. The blonde looked over her teammate with a smirk and stuck out her tongue. Nah, come on, this is serious, Vivi protested. What if he finds out about me? Vivi-sensei, I know he looks, well, lazy, but he just so happens to be brilliant. He'd figure it out eventually. We just need to make sure he only finds out what I want him to find out, she emphasized. Vivi nodded thoughtfully, stepping over the snoozing boy with the odd hair, and he and Ino walked over to the center of the clearing. Now then, the sleep spell is not very difficult to master, Vivi began his lecture, as Ino paid rapt attention. It can be used against multiple targets or single targets at once, depending on how much magic chakra you put into it. Unfortunately, I already have a huge resistance to that spell, so practicing it on me won't be very useful. So, what do I do? Ino asked. Vivi looked over at Shikamaru and shrugged. Well, you're the one who said he'd find out eventually. Oh, like he'd consent to being my training dummy, she huffed. Besides, I wanted this stuff to be a surprise for the next Chunin exams. Chunin exams? Vivi asked curiously. Ino turned serious. It's a huge test and tournament to decide who gets promoted to the next ninja rank, Chunin. It's very tough and lots of people die every time it's taken. And I thought the Festival of the Hunt was bad, Vivi murmured thoughtfully, but shook his head. So, you go through this exam with your team? Ino nodded. Then maybe you should reveal your abilities soon enough for you all to learn how to fight as a team. You said Shikamaru's brilliant? Then he can probably figure out how to use your new powers a lot more effectively than I can, Vivi concluded. Ino frowned. But Vivi-sensei, you know the abilities. All these jutsu. Sorry, spells, she corrected as usual at his look. The black mage sighed and shook his head. Yes, but he knows this world. I don't. The blonde sighed as well, looking over at her snoring teammate and friend thoughtfully. Fair enough. How do I wake him up? Just hit him. Or use a damaging spell on him, Vivi advised. His eyes widened at the evil smile that appeared on Ino's face. Hey. Hold on. Look, just do that jutsu spell. Sorry, that makes yourself invisible. The sky above had already begun to turn dark as Ino concentrated. Vivi sighed. Vanish, he muttered, thankful that Quina had taught him this ability of hers before. Everything. He activated his float power at the same time and ascended to a safe altitude. Over the weeks he'd been teaching Ino, he had to say he was impressed. She'd mastered most of the lower-level spells he knew, and because of her more flexible magical signature she'd learned some of the white magic he'd picked up from Eiko and Garnet, though these were just status-inducing spells, like blind. He felt great pride in her, a pride he decided that was associated with being a teacher. Thunder, crack-a-boom. Yow! Of course, he noted with a mental sigh, he also felt exasperation with her. Maybe that was part of being a teacher too. So, let me get this straight. You were sick of not being trained by a Summa, so you found this old scroll on. What was it called again? Shikamaru asked, surprisingly calm despite being zapped by lightning. Ino had been laughing too hard to answer his angry demands of what had happened. He sighed as he ran a hand through his now spiky, static-filled hair. Troublesome girl. Hee. Object-focusing jutsus, Ino got out with only a mild giggle. She bit her lip, but still couldn't look directly at Shikamaru and his afro without breaking into guffaws. Essentially, that staff shapes your chakra into a preset form for a particular jutsu? Shikamaru asked. Ino nodded, still resolutely looking at Shikamaru's feet as they stood in the field. Yes, but I can also shape it in different ways, by remembering how I shaped it on other staves for other jutsus, she replied. Shikamaru sighed. Tch, troublesome. Look, I'm sorry for hiding it but you guys weren't exactly helping. Ino retorted. How are we going to survive the exams if we don't get our act together? You could have told us sooner. Preferably without blasting me with a lightning bolt. Shikamaru replied, annoyed. Ino sighed, but since arguing more over it would be more troublesome, I say we just move on. Drama is stupid, the genius surmised. Ino smiled brilliantly at him. Thank you, Shikamaru. Now then. You're going to tell Asuma-sensei about everything you can and have been doing. And I'll train with you. Shikamaru got out with a grimace. He hated training. How much? Just during team meetings. You'll have to do the rest on your own, Shikamaru said flatly. Ino shrugged. Yeah, fine, whatever. So, want to see what I can do? Shikamaru sighed. Too troublesome. It'd be better to do it with the team so you don't have to repeat yourself, he said. Ino snorted. Lazy bum. Troublesome girl. Do I have to strike you with lightning again? I'd much prefer that sleep jutsu of yours. It's the most useful ability of yours I've seen, Shikamaru replied honestly. Whack! Ow! Bastard! Ino shrieked. Naruto got out of his bed, cleaned up and headed to his kitchen for his usual breakfast of ramen and red bean paste. He sat down to it and began to happily slurp up ramen. Yo! Duh! Naruto cried out in shock, flinging his chopsticks at the source of the noise. An amused Kakashi caught them between his fingers. Morning, Naruto. The blonde glared at his sensei. What the hell are you doing here, Kakashi-sensei? Mama, is that any way to greet your teacher? Here, Kakashi replied, handing over a basket of fruits and vegetables. Naruto glared suspiciously at it. I hate vegetables. They always taste bad. This is fresh. And besides, it's not healthy to only eat ramen. A ninja must be in good health, after all, the Jounin explained. Naruto took an apple out of the basket and sniffed it suspiciously. He took a bite and chewed it thoughtfully. His eyebrows rose. Ha! It's sweet. And not rotten. Kakashi, I smiled at that. Knew you'd like it. Well, see you at 7 o'clock, sharp. Naruto rolled his eyes. Which really means 11 o'clock, right? Ma. More or less, the copy ninja replied, vanishing as silently as he'd arrived. Naruto stuck his tongue out after his sensei, and said into his breakfast, Man, why didn't anyone tell me fresh fruit tasted so good? Naruto wondered, eagerly devouring the fruit alongside his ramen. He then dressed and leapt out of the window, landing easily and walking along the street at a sedate pace. Ever since they'd returned from their C-rank mission turned-day, Team 7 had been taking D-rank missions again. Babysitting, trash cleanup, the same old same old. Though they'd certainly been getting a lot of requests for birthday parties. Probably because of Naruto's ball act. After all, Sakura-chan, though still wonderful in his eyes, sucked hard at magic tricks, and Sasuke was the worst clown he'd ever seen. Admittedly, he couldn't stop laughing when he caught sight of him, but that was probably because he knew Sasuke. He soon caught sight of Hinata, walking through the village proper. The blonde grinned and waved. Heya, Hinata-chan. The blue-haired girl turned and blushed at the sight of him, but managed a smile. And Naruto-kun. It's nice to see you. Same here. So, how have you been? Naruto began walking alongside Hinata, to which she turned a little redder but stayed strong. She was happy to see him again, happy to have him back, happy to have him talking to her. She wouldn't get nervous now. Oh, good. My team has been on several missions already, she said softly. Naruto nodded. That's cool. My team was on a C-rank mission, that turned A rank on us. Hinata's pale eyes widened just a bit at this. A rank? Are you okay? What happened? Naruto scratched the back of his head with a smile. Some missing mean, and other assorted things. But it turned out fine. In the end, he said, his face becoming a bit sad. His thoughts turned to Haku. What had happened to her? Was she all right? Did she find new meaning to her life? Or, after seeing Zabuza's death, had she? Hinata frowned at Naruto's unhappy expression, and moved a bit closer. He looked to her, and she blushed even harder at the proximity but powered on. Naruto-kun. If you'd like to talk about it. WL. I'm always willing to listen. Naruto blinked at her, and smiled. Not his full-blown grin, but a softer, and slightly more honest smile. It made Hinata's heart flutter. I'd like that, Naruto said quietly. Thanks, Hinata-chan. He turned and waved goodbye, which Hinata managed to weakly return. I'll see you later, Hinata-chan. Let's have ramen sometime. Oh okay. Hinata squeaked, smiling dreamily. Ramen with Naruto-kun. Like a date? A date? She felt faint. Oi, Hinata-chan. Eep. She squeaked, spinning around. She saw her teammates staring at her. Shino with his usual impassive look, Akamaru barking and wagging his tail happily at her, and Kiba glaring after Naruto. Hello, Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, Akamaru, she returned warmly. Hey, was that idiot Naruto bothering you? Kiba growled. Hinata shook her head. And no, he wasn't. Okay, but let me know if he does, Kiba smirked. I'll kick the crap out of him. At Hinata's slightly horrified expression, Shino decided to intervene. We should probably hurry. Kurenai-sensei said she had something important to tell us today. Kiba grinned. It's probably the Chunin exams. She said that we're ready, didn't she? This'll be awesome. That may be likely, however, you should not take such an offer lightly. The exams will doubtlessly be extremely dangerous, Shino opined. Hinata tapped her fingers together as they walked to the training ground they usually met at. But Shino-kun, would Kurenai-sensei really enter us if she didn't think us ready? Most likely not, but it does not mean we should drop our guard, the Aburame replied. Kiba laughed cockily. Come on Shino. We'll mop the floor with the competition. Isn't that right Akamaru? The white dog barked in agreement. Arf! Sasuke ran through his forms, like he'd done every morning ever since he'd gotten his sword. Its balanced weight merged with his movements perfectly. He was one with his blade, and with the Sharingan active he could direct every thrust and kick and lunge with artful precision. It still wasn't enough. His rage grew, echoing in his movements. He'd fought so hard, even unlocked his bloodline, but in the end, he'd had to be saved. That damn dead last. How the hell did he get that weapon? How'd he beat Haku? Why couldn't I beat her? Another sore point with Sasuke was that he'd been beaten by a girl. Admittedly, a powerful kunoichi, but still. It was another blow to his already battered pride. Slash, parry, lunge, deflect, jump, kick, slash, flip, spin. Katon, Gakakyu no Jutsu. Sasuke threw his sword at the same time he blew the fireball, and with the chakra wire attached to the end of it the flames followed, catching up to and twisting around the blade, transforming the whole thing into a giant, fiery comet. Kaboom! The projectile slammed into the training post, utterly decimating it and blowing a several-meter-wide crater out of the ground. Sasuke landed, panting only slightly. He tugged on the wire attached to his sword and it sprang up through the smoke, landing easily in his hand. The Uchiha smirked. Now, all it needs is a name, he murmured thoughtfully. He noticed how his shadow was cast by the sun above, and sighed. I'll be late. He muttered, sheathing his sword. He turned and leapt over the wall of the Uchiha quarter, setting out for the training field. Naruto. Hey, Naruto. The blonde looked up and spotted the familiar form of Tenten, waving at him from the front of her shop. He smiled and waved back, mindful of the glares of the people around them. Hey Tenten. The bun girl noticed the glares, but paid them little mind as she walked over to Naruto with a smile. How goes it? Not bad, you? The girl sighed, popping her neck. Guy-sensei's had us training nearly non-stop. He's entering us in the Chunin exams this year. Chunin exams huh? Naruto asked. Tenten raised an eyebrow. Where have you been? It's starting in only a week. A week? Oh man. I completely forgot. Naruto cursed. It's just that, my team was off in Wave Country for a while and… Wait, Wave Country? You mean you were mixed up in that Gato business? Tenten asked, wide-eyed. Naruto grinned. So you've heard? Hard not to, once we started getting business from them again, Tenten explained. She smiled. Most of the gossip lately has been about the new, great Naruto Bridge. Naruto Bridge? The blonde asked, grinning in delight. Oh yeah. The old man named it after me. I knew he would. I knew it. Naruto began to do an odd victory dance, taking a bemused Tenten's hands and spinning her around happily. She laughed at his childlike exuberance. Now, Naruto. Don't get so cocky. I'm not. But I've got a bridge named after me. Naruto cheered. Soon, I'll have a whole constellation named for me, just you wait. Constellation? Who'd name a constellation after you? Tenten teased. Naruto smirked. Some poor, defenseless princess, who just so happens to be the head of the Constellation Naming Council. The blonde announced, leading Tenten to giggle. Tenten! Barked an older male voice. The two genin stopped their silly dance and looked back. A tall, brown-haired man in blacksmith's gear glared at Naruto. Get back in here, the forge needs cleaning, he said flatly. Tenten sighed, but smiled at Naruto. The blonde nervously smiled back. Ah well. See you later, Naruto, she said, before turning and heading back in. Her father glared at Naruto, who smiled weakly back. He walked over to the blonde and spoke in a harsh whisper. Just stay away from her, demon, he hissed, before turning and storming back into the store. Naruto glared back, before sighing and heading off. Swell. When we meet again, she'll probably think I'm a demon too, he thought sadly, though he got his grin back up when he reached the training field. Morning, Sakura-chan. He shouted happily. The pink-haired girl glared at him. You're late, heir. Well. Naruto began. Sasuke smirked very slightly behind the girl, and Naruto stuck his tongue out at the Uchiha before smiling brightly at Sakura. Ah, well, you see Sakura-chan, I had to dance with this girl and… Liar. Honestly, you're getting as bad as Kakashi-sensei. She huffed. Naruto smirked. Or maybe he really is late all the time because of the reasons he says. The blonde suggested. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Humph. I didn't think you were that dumb, dead last, he said. Oh, big mistake emo boy, Naruto returned, feral smile on his face. You don't want to get your butt kicked by me again, right Sasuke-chan? Sasuke sent a glare and blast of killing intent that made Sakura shiver, but Naruto just smirked into it. The keyblade flashed into his hand. Bring it, bastard. Don't get cocky, dead last. Ahem, Kakashi interrupted. The genin looked up at Kakashi sitting in a tree branch above them. I smiled. You know, I was about to hand you these forms, the jounin mused, holding up a few pieces of paper, for entrance to the Chunin exams, but now, Chunin exams? Sakura asked nervously. Kakashi-sensei, you really think we're ready for that? Well, I did, until I saw how immature you all were acting, Kakashi went on airily. A shared look between Naruto and Sasuke put their rivalry on hold for the moment. They looked at Kakashi, determined. Come on Kakashi-sensei. We can do it. Naruto insisted. Yes, Sasuke added. Sakura nervously put in her 2 cents. I think that, together, we might. Well, I'll leave it up to you, Kakashi shrugged, tossing them the papers, which they each caught effortlessly. No other missions for today, I'll see you next week if you decide to sign up. And with that, the silver-haired jounin vanished. Naruto grinned. Alright, day off. Sakura-chan, want to go do something? Heck no. Sasuke-kun? No, Sasuke replied shortly, walking off. Naruto sighed and shrugged. Oh well, can't win 'em all. Naruto heard something behind him and stiffened. He swung around, keyblade pointed at his foe, which happened to be a box, painted to look like a rock. He sighed. Konohamaru, rocks aren't square. Boom! The box erupted into smoke, leaving 3 coughing 8-year-olds before him, as expected of my rival. Konohamaru grinned, revealing the gap in his teeth, as he shot up dramatically. Prepare for trouble, and make it, triple. A little girl added in, to protect the world from devastation. A glasses-wearing boy sniffled, and unite all peoples within our nation. Konohamaru declared, to fight for the virtues of truth and love. The girl sang, to extend our reach to the stars above. The other boy wheezed again, Moegi. The girl struck a pose, Udon. The glasses-wearing boy mirrored her, Konohamaru. The leader declared, Konohamaru Core, blast off at the speed of light. They all shouted. Surrender now or prepare to fight, was Sakura and Naruto's reaction, blinking. Konohamaru grinned. What do you think of it? I'm still trying to figure out what it is, Sakura muttered, as Naruto laughed sheepishly. Konohamaru. Guys! How did you come up with that? Whatever it was, television. They chorused. Naruto and Sakura sweat dropped. Knew that thing only caused trouble, Naruto muttered. So, how do you know Naruto anyway? Sakura asked Konohamaru, as the group walked for the main area of the town. The pink-haired girl decided to learn a little more about Naruto, but only because of the strange changes he'd gone through lately. Yeah, he can't hold a candle to Sasuke-kun. Inner Sakura added helpfully. Both Sakuras studiously avoided thinking about how Naruto had shown them more care and thoughtfulness than Sasuke ever had, and that he'd beaten Haku when Sasuke couldn't, even with his bloodline. Oh, he helped teach me how to henge. Konohamaru said happily. Plus, he beat my Jounin instructor. Naruto rubbed the back of his head modestly, grinning. It wasn't very hard. Once I figured out his weakness. The blonde laughed and winked at Konohamaru. The Hokage's grandson winked and grinned back. Sakura raised an eyebrow. What was his weakness? Oh, that's easy. Moegi began, ignorant of the looks of horror emerging on Konohamaru and Naruto's faces. He just used his harem impeach. Naruto coughed and smiled as Sakura narrowed her eyes, Moegi's mouth covered by Konohamaru's hand. Used his what? Sakura growled dangerously, pulling on her trusty leather gloves. Naruto laughed nervously again. Nothing, Sakura-chan. Absolutely nothing. Udon wisely stayed silent, as Moegi finally pried Konohamaru's hand off her face, blushing a bit. Yes. Nothing. He didn't use harem no jutsu. Moegi's eyes widened and her hands slapped over her mouth on top of Konohamaru's, but it was too late. Sakura snarled, cracking her knuckles. You showed 3 innocent, impressionable kids your perverted jutsu. Well, come on Sakura-chan. It's really useful and run away. The blonde screamed, grabbing Moegi's hand and taking off at full speed, Konohamaru and Udon right behind them, as the furious Sakura chased after them. You pervert. I'm going to break every bone in your body. Waiwa. Sakura-chan, have mercy. Konohamaru pulled ahead, eyes closed. Sure, Naruto was his boss, but really? He pissed off the scary girl. Why did he have to bring them into it? Wham! Oof! Konohamaru groaned, and looked up at the black thing he'd run into. Glaring down at him was a face painted in purple lines, framed by a black cowl with 2 large points on either side. Watch where you're going, runt, the creature growled, and grabbed Konohamaru by the front of his shirt and lifting him up. Hey! Let me go you freak! The little boy cried, struggling feebly. The black-clad man laughed mockingly, his hood lifting up just enough to show a hitayate. On it was an hourglass shape, identifying him as a ninja of Sunigakure. It reflected Konohamaru's frightened face, as the ninja's cruel smile grew. Oh, what are you going to do? Cry to your mommy. Flash! A metal blade appeared at the side of his head, and the black-clad man turned his head, gaping a bit at the bizarre weapon now being held against him. Its wielder, a blond boy dressed in orange and black, glared at him, and a hint of killing intent reached his senses. Drop him, pajama boy, or I drop you, he growled. The black-clad ninja smirked. Oh really? You and what army, runt? Stop it already, Kankuro. The 2 ninja turned their gaze to see a tall, blonde girl with her hair in 4 spiky pigtails walk up the alley. She set a hand on her hip as she gave the one called Kankuro a warning look. He'll get mad, Kankuro huffed. Won't take long to deal with this runt and the brat with the toy, Kankuro sneered. Completely ignoring the shocked expressions of Moegi, Udon, and Sakura behind him, Naruto smirked back. Look who's talking. I'm not the one with a mummy on my back. Kankuro reached behind his back with his free hand but was stopped immediately as his hand was twisted painfully by that overgrown key's teeth. Naruto snagged the other boy's moving hand in his keyblade's teeth and twisted his hand, making it so that Kankuro couldn't move his arm without hurting himself. Reaching for something? Kankuro growled and was about to retort, when a chilling killer intent fell over the alley. The blonde girl, Sakura, and the kids all shivered under its effects, but Naruto merely looked around trying to find its source. Enough, Kankuro. You're an embarrassment to our village. Have you forgotten why we came all the way here? A cold, monotone voice spoke. Naruto traced it to a red-headed boy dressed all in black, with a giant gourd on his back. He was hanging upside down from a nearby tree, black-lined green eyes staring intently at them all. He vanished in a whirl of sand, before reappearing on the ground. I know. I mean, they challenged us. They started the whole thing, really. See, here's what happened. Kankuro tried to explain, but Gaara cut him off. Shut up or I'll kill you, he stated flatly, dead certainty in his gaze. Naruto fought a chill down his spine as he released Kankuro's hand. Kankuro nervously let Konohamaru down, who immediately fled behind Naruto. The blonde narrowed his eyes at the newcomer. I apologize for their conduct, the redhead said flatly, as though reading from a boring script. A throat was cleared above them, and all turned to see an annoyed-looking Uchiha Sasuke sitting in the tree. Hey, you! Identify yourself, Sasuke ordered arrogantly. You mean, me? The blonde girl asked, blushing slightly. Naruto rolled his eyes as Sakura seethed. God damn it, why the hell does the bastard get all the female attention? Why? No, the guy with the gourd on his back, the Uchiha continued. The redhead blinked up at him. Sabaka no Gaara, he replied. Temari, the blonde girl volunteered, adjusting the black folded object on her back while casting a nervous look at Gaara. Kankuro, the last replied gruffly. Oh. You must be here for the Chunin exams, Sakura interjected, smiling slightly and trying to defuse the tension. The attempt failed, and she scowled as all three sand ninja ignored her. Gaara shifted his gaze to Naruto, who stared back determinedly. You, the redhead stated to Naruto. What's your name? Uzumaki Naruto, Naruto responded evenly, keyblade still in his hand. He lowered it away from Kankuro, but it wouldn't vanish, indicating that there was still a possible threat. Gaara's eyes lingered on the weapon only a moment, before returning his eyes to Naruto's. I look forward to meeting you in the exams, Gaara replied simply. He then turned and walked past Sakura, Moegi, and Udon without so much as a glance at them. Temari followed, eyes now on Naruto with an unreadable expression, as Kankuro glowered at the blonde before following as well. Konohamaru shivered, and nudged himself a little closer to Naruto. Man, that guy's even more emo than Sasuke. Naruto finally pronounced, shaking his head with a grin. Sakura growled as Udon and Moegi giggled a bit. Shut up Naruto. Sasuke-kun is not emo. He and Sasuke probably used the same conditioner. The blonde scoffed and smiled when Konohamaru laughed, fear forgotten. Sasuke released a little killing intent, getting attention back on him. The Chunin exams are in a week, and I for one am going to enter. He glared expectantly at Naruto and Sakura. The blonde grinned. Oh, what, you have to ask. Of course I'm entering. How about you, Sakura-chan? The pink-haired girl looked nervous, but slowly nodded. I'll enter too. Yada! That's awesome. I've got to go train. Naruto crowed. Konohamaru tugged on his jacket. Hey, Naruto and Ai-chan, can we play ninja? Naruto made a long-suffering face. Ah, come on. I've got to train. But we haven't played in weeks. And you always come up with the best missions. Udon pleaded. Please, Naruto and Ai-chan. Begged Moegi, her eyes wide and bright while her lips turned into a pout. It was the most adorable expression Naruto had ever seen, and he felt his will slipping away. He sucked in a deep breath, and sighed. Okay. I'll play. Sasuke smirked ever so slightly. Naruto stuck his tongue out at him and gave a broad grin to the core members. Alright Team Uzumaki. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is. The day of the exams came, and Team 7 had gathered at the testing building. Following a few other genin teams, they soon found themselves on the second floor, where several ninja were crowded around. Pushing their way through the crowd, they found Team Guy in front of a door where two oddly dressed genin stood. We're not letting you in, got it? None of you have what it takes to be Chunin. One with bandages covered his face shouted. Yeah, we've failed this test 7 times. None of you are strong enough to get through. His companion, a brown-haired guy wearing a blue cap, added with a scoff. A brown-haired guy who resembled Hinata merely smirked, as Lee and Tenten stood at his sides. That just means it was your fate to fail 7 times, the boy sneered in a level of disdain Naruto had only before heard in Sasuke's voice. Tenten, a quick glance to the gray-eyed boy as though asking for permission, moved forward and smiled kindly. Please, can't you let us in? We'll take our chances, she said reasonably. The boy wearing the blue cap held up a hand to backhand her, but before anyone could move. Whack! The boy was slammed back against the door, holding his head with a groan, as the keyblade clattered to the floor from bouncing off his face. Every ninja there gawked in astonishment as it vanished in a flash of light, and reappeared in Naruto's outstretched hand. He glared coldly at the boy, before turning to Tenten. "You okay?" Tenten nodded, looking a bit embarrassed, as the genin got back up and glared at Naruto. "Hey! What was that for? Not so tough after all, huh?" Sasuke smirked, Sharingan eyes spinning. "Just a couple of weaklings, disguising a door to make us all turn back." "Huh?" asked a few genin. "It's a genjutsu, and besides," Sakura added, "this is the second floor. The test is being held on the third floor." "Hey! Why couldn't you let me in on this?" Naruto demanded. Sasuke smirked. "Looks like I overestimated your abilities," the Uchiha gloated, as Naruto glared. "Damn it," the two genin muttered, disengaging the genjutsu. The sign above the door now read 201 instead of 301. "You saw through it." "Of course we did," Sakura said proudly. "But, you also just made things harder on yourself," the blue cap-wearing genin smirked. "This was supposed to weed out the morons. The smart move would have been to move on." "Idiots." The two genin walked off, leaving a pissed Sasuke to glare after them as the other ninja began to move, leaving Team 7 and Team Guy in the hallway. "Looks like I overestimated your abilities, my ass," Naruto muttered, Tenten giggling just a bit. He gave her a nervous smile, which she returned, as the long-haired, gray-eyed boy looked at Sasuke. "My name is Hyuga Niji." "And you are?" The Uchiha ignored him and headed for the stairs at the end of the hallway, Sakura and Naruto following. Niji narrowed his eyes slightly, before turning away and walking in the opposite direction, Tenten following. Team 7 reached the open room housing the stairs to the next level when Lee reappeared at the top of the balcony on the third floor above them. "Wait! Your name is Uchiha Sasuke, correct? What's it to you?" Sasuke retorted. Lee grinned. "I am Rock Lee, and I have heard that you are a prodigy. Last of the Uchiha clan. I would very much like to test my skills against you. As well as you, Naruto-san." Me?" Naruto asked, as Sasuke smirked. Lee nodded rapidly. "Indeed, Naruto-san. But first, I would like to fight Sasuke-san. In order to prove myself to the beautiful Sakura-chan." The pink-haired girl gaped in disbelief, as Lee leaped down to their floor and smiled, blowing a kiss. "Sakura-san, will you be my girlfriend? I swear, I will protect you forever with my blazing flames of love and youth," Lee proclaimed, as Sakura blanched. "Oh God, no! No, no, no! Naruto! Sasuke-kun! Kick his ass!" Sakura screeched in horror. Lee frowned, and Naruto sighed. "What? What's wrong?" Lee inquired. Sakura cringed. "Your eyebrows, the spandex ga, you're so weird." Lee looked heartbroken, before smiling broadly and giving a thumb up, his teeth glinting with a noticeable sound effect. "Then I will just have to prove myself to you. Uchiha Sasuke, shall we fight?" Sasuke smirked, rushing forward. "If you're so eager to be beaten, then fine, let's go." Lee sidestepped the Uchiha's first punch and slammed an ankle into his side, sending him tumbling away. Ignoring Sakura's cry of his name, Sasuke landed on his feet, trying not to wince at the pain in his ribs. He activated his Sharingan and leapt forward again, but even though this time he could see Lee move, even as he moved to block he was too late. The punch connected with his solar plexus. "Oof. You may be able to see my attacks coming, but it does no good unless your body can keep up," Lee informed his opponent. Slipping under Sasuke's guard he slammed a foot into his stomach, launching him into the air. Almost instantaneously he was above Sasuke, grabbing him from behind and sending both into a death spin for the ground. "Sasuke!" Sakura screamed as Lee opened his mouth. Omote re-dash. Dynamic entry. Lee was knocked into the wall by what appeared to be a giant turtle, with huge eyebrows. Mato Guy appeared next, berating his student for acting so recklessly. They then engaged in a weird, overly dramatic hugging episode. After an even more bizarre apology to Team 7, Guy and Lee vanished, leaving Sakura and Naruto blinking awkwardly, while Sasuke got back to his feet, scowling and trying to keep what little dignity he had left. "Oh. K. That was weird," Naruto expressed. Sakura nodded dazedly, and turned to glare at Naruto. "God, why is it that weirdos get crushes on me, but not the guys I'm actually after?" Sakura demanded. Naruto gave the pink-haired girl a deadpan expression. Why do girls always become attracted to good-looking jerks? The blonde asked in turn. Sakura would have retorted, had Sasuke not grunted for them to follow him upstairs. She still shot the smirking Naruto a deadly look, all the way to the real exam room. "Ah, good of you all to come," Kakashi commented, standing in front of said room. "If you hadn't all come, you wouldn't be able to take the exam at all." Sasuke scowled as Sakura and Naruto sighed. "So you didn't tell us that because..." The blonde prompted. "I didn't want you and Sasuke forcing Sakura to enter, though it appears you didn't need to." Kakashi smiled. "I know you're impatient, so I'll be brief. You've all grown well beyond my expectations, and I am proud to be your teacher." Kakashi's eye smile turned devious. The three genin were a little concerned at how well they could read their teacher already. "So, knock 'em dead. Oh, and try to win. I've got a nice chunk of change on you three in the Jounin pool." With that, Kakashi vanished. "I really hate our teacher," Naruto sighed, though he was grinning while he said it. Sasuke just smirked, as Sakura smiled. "Well, passing to make him proud is a better motivator than passing to win him money," she suggested. The two boys could get behind that, and so spurred they pushed the double doors open and entered the exam room. "Boy, this place is crowded," Naruto commented, shaking his head. Sasuke glared at him and huffed at the full room of genin, most turning and glowering at the newcomers. His expression remained unchanged, even as a familiar blonde girl glomped him from behind. "Sasuke-kun. Am I glad to see you. This place was definitely lacking good looks before." "Hey, is that Naruto?" Ino blinked at him. Naruto blinked in confusion. Yeah, I know pig, get your hands off Sasuke-kun right now." Sakura snarled, channeling chakra to her fists. Ino ignored her, letting Sasuke go and walking over to get a better look at Naruto. Naruto, in turn, got a good look at Ino's new attire: blue jacket with short sleeves, black tank top undershirt, white skirt, and dull yellow gloves and boots. A large wooden staff was strapped to her back, he noted, as her face came very close to his own. His cheeks reddened as she hummed thoughtfully. "You know, you look a lot better with your hair down than up," she said with a smirk. "But still nothing compared to Sasuke-kun." She turned away and tried to glomp Sasuke again, but was intercepted by Sakura. The two girls began snarling and hissing at each other, while Shikamaru and Chuji walked around them and came up to Naruto. "Naruto, you're in this too. How troublesome," the pineapple-haired boy sighed. Chuji munched some chips and grinned broadly. "Nice outfit, Naruto. It looks really cool." This from a guy wearing underwear on his head, Naruto thought, but he grinned back anyway. It was nice to be complimented, though not as nice as being complimented by a girl. "Hey, Naruto. How the hell did you get in here?" A familiar bark accompanied the equally familiar voice, and Naruto turned to glare at Kiba. Shino and Hinata also came up on either side, Hinata smiling and blushing at Naruto. "Hello," and Naruto-kun, the Hyuga girl greeted, as Shino merely inclined his head. Naruto inclined his head to Shino back. The Aburame had always been polite to him at the academy, when he spoke at all, and he looked and acted very cool, and grinned broadly at Hinata. "Hey Shino. Hinata-chan. And what's your name?" he asked Kiba, smirking. The dog-like boy glowered indignantly. "It's Inuzuka Kiba, you idiot." "Oh. Next time you might want to show me your collar," the blonde replied with an evil grin. Hinata visibly tried not to laugh, as Kiba growled. "You making fun of me, idiot? You got any better insults than idiot? Hey, you genin. Quiet down. You shouldn't draw attention to yourselves, or you won't make it out alive," a gray-haired boy wearing glasses and purple clothing told them, walking identified himself as Kabuto, another leaf nin taking the Chunin exams. "How many times have you taken it, Kabuto-san?" asked Sakura politely. The gray-haired boy smiled and shrugged. "7th time around. Trust me, it's not easy, especially this year." Kabuto turned his gaze on Naruto. Without warning, the keyblade flashed into existence in Naruto's hand, much to nearly everyone's surprise, especially Naruto's. "What? Naruto, when you'd get that thing?" Chuji asked, blinking. Naruto opened his mouth to answer, but Kabuto stepped in, holding up a card. "Uzumaki Naruto, genin. 36 D-ranked missions, 1 C-rank mission upgraded to A in ninjutsu is ranked high, taijutsu ranked high, genjutsu ranked very low, stamina and agility are off the charts. Signatures are use of the Kage Bunshin and a keyblade. The gray-haired ninja smiled kindly. A keyblade? Asked Shuji. Apparently, there are a few such weapons fashioned after the legendary one. They incorporate a binding/summoning jutsu that makes them appear and reappear at the will of the wielder, Kabuto explained. Sasuke glowered. Where did you get that information? Well, as I said, I've failed the exam 7 years in a row. During that time, while I've gotten stronger, I've also collected information. Each of my cards features data on a specific ninja. Anyone you'd like to see? Sasuke asked for information on Hyuga Niji, Rock Lee, and Sabakagara. While he listened to their data, Naruto stared at Kabuto, working his jaw. The keyblade would not vanish, and kept giving him an uneasy feeling around Kabuto. Why, he wasn't sure. The guy seemed nice enough, and had provided more information for him to use as a cover for the true origin of his keyblade. But the weapon wouldn't vanish, even after the exam proctor entered the room and began the test. Chapter 13, The Forest of Death Part I Take. The written test had been long, boring, and difficult. Until Naruto and his team managed to figure out the point of the exam. To gather information without being caught, what would normally be known as cheating. The final question had been a test of courage and decisiveness. You either agreed to take the question, finding out that agreeing to take it was the right answer all along, or you trudged out. It was becoming very clear to Naruto that being a ninja was a lot like being a prankster. You always had to be one step ahead of those the joke was on. The passing genin were startled when a purple-haired woman burst through the window, a dramatic sign reading Mitarashi Enko unfurling behind her. The first test proctor, Marino Ibiki, a heavily scarred and disturbing man, rolled his eyes. Enko, you're early. Well, you took too long explaining things to the brats. Enko replied cheekily, grinning out at the genin unpleasantly. So, only 26 teams left? Not bad, Ibiki, but I'll cut them by half in the second part. Right, I'm Mitarashi Enko. Follow me, brats. Time for the next part. She leapt out the window, cackling maniacally, while the entire room just kind of stared after her. What are you waiting for, brats? Get going. Ibiki roared, and the room quickly emptied. The scarred interrogator chuckled darkly, before looking over a few of the papers. He paused by one, and picked it up, raising a hairless brow. Done by Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage, he read aloud. The signature was below a rather decent sketch of said blonde demon container, standing triumphantly over the Uchiha kid, a member of the Inuzuka clan, and that redhead from the sand. Ibiki smirked and shook his head. Keep dreaming, kid, he grunted. The genins, meanwhile, were led to the walls of Training Field 44. Enko stood before them, trench coat swaying in the breeze as the early afternoon sun shone down on them all. Alright, listen up brats. Each team has been given a scroll, heaven, or earth. Your goal is to reach the tower in the center of the training area, with both of these scrolls, and all 3 of your teammates. You are free to employ any means to get these scrolls. This is not a game, this is actual combat, so treat it as such. So, how long do we have? And can we quit in the middle of the test? Shikamaru asked, hands in his pockets. Enko laughed. 5 days, and no, you can't quit. Can you quit in the middle of a battle? Well, maybe, but you'd just get killed. They don't call this the Forest of Death for nothing. What's in the scrolls? Asked another genin. Enko looked him over. Nothing you should be concerned about until you get to the tower. If you open it before then. Well. Let's just say it won't be pleasant, she chuckled evilly, most of the genin looking uneasy at this. Naruto rolled his eyes and grinned nearby. Oh, Forest of Death, I'm so scared, he mocked. He comically cowered, shaking. Oh no. We're all doomed. A few genin nearby laughed at his antics. Hinata blushed and smiled, her anxiety being reduced just a bit by her crush's words. Thwip. Flash. A kunai had grazed Naruto's cheek, even as the keyblade flashed into existence in his hand and he assumed a fighting stance. His blue eyes widened as he felt a warm, very female body pressing against his back, and hot breath against his ear. Now it's tough guys like you who are always the first to die, Enko crooned into his ear, licking at his now burning red cheek. And leave such yummy blood all over the forest floor. That hussy. Hinata thought angrily, fists clenching as she watched. Tenten felt kunai come into her hands as her eyes narrowed. God, she's so shameless. Excuse me, test proctor, but I believe this is yours, a long-haired grass ninja said, her long tongue wrapped around the ring of the steel kunai Enko had thrown. The special Jounin took it, still smirking sexily. She patted Naruto on the shoulder and walked back to the front of the group, Naruto just gaping after her like a fool. Gah! Hey! He yelped as the long-haired grass ninja sniffed uncomfortably near him. She smiled at him creepily. Sorry, I just love the scent of blood, she hissed. Naruto backed off, his keyblade out and screaming danger. At this Genin's presence, her eyes locked onto the keyblade, and a hint of killing intent flashed over Naruto's senses before the odd ninja turned and went back to her team. God Naruto! Have you no shame? Sakura scolded, nevertheless handing him a band-aid. Naruto accepted it gratefully, leaning the keyblade against his shoulder. His eyes narrowed as the keyblade's warning lessened, but not by much. Come on dead last, let's get to the gate, Sasuke stated flatly. Naruto grinned and followed. Sure. Let's kick some ass guys. Tenten. Are you alright? Lee asked his teammate, concerned. The bund girl blinked and looked at the spandex-clad ninja. She smiled uneasily. I'm fine. Just, you know. Little nervous. Wosh. Fear not, Tenten. Our burning flames of youth will outshine those of our competition, and we shall be victorious. Is that not right, Niji? The stoic Hyuga smirked and nodded. Let's go. The green-clad ninja grinned and gave a thumbs up. The other genin all made it to their starting gates. The tall wooden structures groaned as they were all opened at once, as though reluctant to let the young ninjas into its confines. Enko stood outside, and waited. A grim smile came on her face as the first screams filled the air. This should prove interesting, she murmured to herself. Utada Hikaru smirked darkly. Already, her team of genin from Getsugakure, village hidden under the moon, had tracked down a genin team from Konoha. They had stopped for a break in a clearing. A fat boy, a weak-looking blonde girl, and some lazy-looking kid with hair down up in a spiky ponytail. She caught the eye of her fellow genin and quickly signaled. They nodded, the two young men ready to strike. Hikaru herself formed the hand seals for her Koshoku no Jutsu. Hikaru leapt into the clearing, the jutsu activating and causing a massive burst of light that would blind the genin team. Her own goggles, and those also worn by her team, protected them. All right, hand over the scroll and no one gets hurt. She shouted, kunai ready to be thrown. The genin did not respond, staring dumbly at her. Hikaru growled, and threw a kunai at the fat one. Fine. Then you can just dash. The fat boy poofed out of existence, and Hikaru stared. It's a dash. She froze, and found her jutsu disappearing. Hikaru gawked as her body refused to obey her commands. Well, that was helpful, commented a lazy voice. The ponytail boy was standing near the edge of the clearing, smirking at her. She managed to get her eyes to look down, and saw that a shadow stretched between herself and the boy. Her teammates also had trapped shadows, and were struggling to get free. Yeah, that light jutsu of theirs boosted your shadow jutsu Shikamaru. The fat boy added, stepping out of the bushes nearby with a grin. So, Chuji, you want to handle them, or should I? A female voice asked behind Hikaru. She couldn't turn her head to see, but it had to be the blonde girl. Chuji looked thoughtful. Meh. It'll be faster if you do it, Ino. Besides, I'm hungry. He whined. You're always hungry. Ino growled. But fine. Thunder. A flash of light and shock later, and Hikaru was out cold, wondering just how things had gone so wrong. Chuji walked over to the girl and pulled the scroll from her pouch, checking the seal and sighing. It's not the one we're looking for. Ino cursed. Damn it. We have to go through that again. No, Shikamaru said. We just have to find another team with 2 Earth Scrolls, and we can trade them. But won't that give us more competition in the final round of the exams? Chuji asked, pulling out a bag of chips and beginning to chow down. Shikamaru sighed. Can't be helped. The more we fight, the less likely our chances of getting to the tower. It's less troublesome to just trade it. Another Konoha team's probably our best bet. Ino smiled broadly and tucked her staff back into the sling on her back. Sounds great. Let's go. Oi, Misumi. Kabuto stopped. Tsurugi Misumi paused his tree hopping, looking back. His eyes narrowed behind his glasses at the gray-haired genin, who was looking up into the branches of the tree he was in. Hey, Kabuto! Get a move on. The medic ninja turned back, face artfully neutral, head for the rendezvous point. I'll catch up. What? Asked Staccato Yoroi, glowering beneath his face mask. What the hell are you thinking? Orochimaru-sama dash. I said, I'll catch up, Kabuto stated, cold and firm. His eyes became slightly red as he glared at his teammates, and both felt a chill go down their spines. Kabuto was much more powerful than them, asshole though he was. Fine, Misumi stated contritely, turning and leaping off. Yoroi followed soon after, still looking back at Kabuto. The gray-haired ninja waited for a moment. A small black bird dropped down from its hidden perch overhead. It cawed, yellow eyes blinking, as it released a small scroll into Kabuto's hands. The ninja nodded, and Diablo flew off into the shadows of the forest. Kabuto opened the scroll and read it through, the only betrayal of his thoughts. Another red flashed through his eyes. He then smiled softly, tucking the scroll away in his kunai pouch before taking off on a northwesterly path through the trees. The tower that was the genin's goal was to the northeast. Look, can I help it if I want to get to the tower and out of this forest as quickly as possible? Sakura asked, not expecting an answer. It was rhetorical, after all. No, Sasuke grunted, maintaining his pace through the trees. Inner Sakura sighed and swooned at his acknowledgement. She was interrupted by Naruto's snort. Yeah well, we're not exactly going to be welcome there without a scroll. The blonde kicked off another tree as the trio kept up their furious pace through the upper levels of the forest canopy. If we get near the tower today, we can set up traps and ambushes for other teams, who will be tired from days of fighting it out, Sasuke reasoned. Brilliant, Sasuke-kun. Sakura complimented. The less fighting we do, the better shape we'll be when we get to the third part of the exam, the Uchiha continued. Naruto frowned thoughtfully. Who made you leader anyway? Oh, like you have a better plan dead last? Sasuke snorted. Naruto rolled his eyes. No, I'm just surprised you're thinking things through, for once. I'm not the one who was dead last in my class, moron. Sasuke growled. I'm not the idiot who announced the genjutsu and got us all that extra competition. Naruto returned. So what, you're afraid you're too weak to fight any of them? Sasuke shot back with a superior smirk. Naruto growled back, keyblade flashing into his hand. Naruto, Sasuke-kun, this isn't helping. Sakura interjected. And besides, Sasuke-kun's plan will work just fine. Loath as he was to admit it, Naruto knew Sakura had a point. And Sasuke may have been a bastard, but he did know his stuff. The plan made sense to him, at least. And while he did love a good fight, it was wiser to save your strength for the important ones. Faye, and they said I never learned, Naruto mentally scoffed, thinking of the academy instructors who had snubbed or ignored him entirely. Not to mention how they taught him incorrectly when it was one-on-one, and insulted him, and mistreated Irika-sensei for befriending him, and he felt a flickering of red chakra on the edge of his senses, and he doused his anger. Naruto mentally groaned. Was this how it was going to be from now on? Get angry, and the Kyuubi's power takes him. Naruto, watch out! Sakura's warning alerted Naruto back to reality just in time, and he lifted his feet up to land on the tree he would have otherwise rammed his head against. His teammates paused. Naruto, pay attention. Sakura added roughly, though he was pleased to see that her eyes were concerned. Sorry, I have to go, the blonde said, shifting uncomfortably. He had barely noticed his discomfort until Sakura had brought him out of his brooding. Well, go then, Sakura stated flatly. Naruto nodded and began to hop down the tree to the ground, before he paused and looked back up. Hey, wait! Shouldn't we come up with a password or something? Just in case one of us gets captured and replaced. Just summon the Keyblade, idiot, Sasuke replied flatly. No one else in this exam has one. Hey! Don't call me an idiot, emo boy. Naruto shot back, and dashed off out of sight. He smirked at finally getting the last word. Coming to a secluded clearing, he unzipped his pants and was about to relieve himself, when the Keyblade flashed into his hand. He felt a huge killing intent behind him, and an equally large mass as a shadow fell over his. Oh, shit, he muttered, leaping to the side while holding his shorts up with one hand. A split second later a massive brown and green, reptilian head smashed down, long fangs digging into the earth. Naruto quickly re-zipped his pants and got into a fighting position, as the giant snake turned back and focused on him with glowing yellow eyes. Okay, I don't really think you can understand me, but I'd just like to say that attacking a guy while he's peeing is definitely not cool, Naruto stated flatly. The killing intent of the snake increased, but the key-bearer just smirked defiantly back. This thing didn't scare him. So bring it on, ugly. I'll kick your tail back to wherever you came from. Naruto shouted. The snake hissed and screeched in challenge, before lunging. A few miles away, in the heart of Konoha, a lone ramen stand was at work. The lunch crowd was coming in and Ichiraku Tsuchi was handling the orders with his usual professionalism. He glared slightly at the increased patronage whenever Naruto didn't eat here, more people came. He'd remembered Naruto, on one occasion, noticing this, and offering to leave if he got too bad for business. The 6-year-old had said this with such uncharacteristic conviction and seriousness in his voice that it had given him a start. Finally, Ichiraku just smiled, patted the blonde's head, and told him that he didn't need the business of people like that. The honest, joyful smile on the boy's face was payment enough to him. Oi, old man. 2 beef bowls please, coming right up. Tsuchi replied, looking down at the pots and basins for the noodles. He noted that they were out of beef flavoring and grimaced. We're out of beef. He frowned, and turned back to his customers. Just a moment, please, he said, and walked to the back room of the stand. Was leaning against a wall, eyes dull and unfocused. Tsuchi frowned and put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Are you all right? What's wrong? She looked up at him, face strained. He grimaced. Not now. Damn it Naruto, what are you doing? It's been 10 minutes, Sasuke said. He got up from the branch he and Sakura had been resting on, waiting for Naruto to come back. Sakura frowned and followed, pulling on her gloves. Something's coming. He muttered to her, and she discreetly put one hand on her kunai pouch. They spotted a familiar orange and black-clad figure, with blonde hair held up by a hitayate. Naruto smiled and waved as he approached. Hey guys, I'm back. Let's get going Anichiwai. Naruto dodged a thrown kunai. He glared indignantly as Sasuke whipped out his sword and held it in a fighting stance, while Sakura gathered more kunai from her pouch and held them between her fingers, ready to throw them at a moment's notice. What's the big idea, you jerk? Naruto shouted. Drop the henge, we know you're not Naruto, Sasuke growled. For one, he wears his hitayate on his arm now, not his head. And where's the bandage on your cheek? Sakura added defiantly. Great, if this is an imposter, where's the real Naruto? Could he have been? Inner Sakura trailed off, but the implication made Sakura feel cold. Well, you're much better than I thought, Naruto said, a silky smirk on his face. With a poof, that strange grass ninja with the long tongue appeared. What did you do with Naruto? Sasuke demanded, Sharingan eyes spinning. The girl's smile grew a little more, long tongue licking the corner of her mouth. Why, I had one of my pets deal with him, she simpered. But I suggest you worry about yourself now, Sasuke-kun. With a drawn kunai she attacked, covering the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Sasuke parried the surprisingly strong blow as Sakura leapt and aimed a kick at the enemy's head. As though swatting away a fly, the grass ninja blocked the kick with her hand and shoved back, sending Sakura flying. Gah! She shouted, twisting in midair and landing on a far trunk. Sakura gawked at the distance she'd been thrown. Just what the hell is she? Sasuke had leapt back, leading the grass ninja away from Sakura. He landed feet first on a tree and leapt forward, slashing at his enemy 3 times while flipping over her. The grass ninja laughed, blocking each hit and grinning as Sasuke landed some distance away, putting his sword in his other hand before briefly shaking out his right. A bit too hard for you, Sasuke-kun? The ninja teased, leaping for Sasuke again, kunai crashing against the Uchiha's blade. Sasuke spun away from the blow, swinging for his enemy's back. Quick as lightning she blocked, but this was what Sasuke intended. He slipped under the strike and kicked the enemy's legs out from under her, sending her falling off the branch. Before she could react, Sasuke jumped off after her, diving like a falcon to catch up, and locking her in a tight hold as they went down headfirst. They fell, faster and faster, and even as the grass ninja struggled with incredible strength, Sasuke held on. He gritted his teeth and directed more chakra to his limbs. Just a little more. Wham! They reached the ground, the grass ninja crying out in pain. Sasuke heard a satisfying crack and pulled off his foe, pulling his sword back to plunge it through the ninja's back. But the grass ninja leapt up and kicked Sasuke away, sending him flying into a tree with an oof. Coo coo coo. I will admit, Sasuke-kun, that was better than I expected. But still not enough to stop me. She cackled. She moved toward Sasuke, but jumped back at several kunai embedding themselves in the forest floor before her. Sakura leapt in, darting forward with a feint kick to the head. The grass ninja countered the rabbit punch that followed, and soon pulled Sakura's stomach into her knee. Ugh! Sakura wheezed, green eyes wide as her breath was stolen. Sakura! Sasuke shouted, bracing against his tree and leaping forward, slashing with his sword. The grass nin leapt back, leaving Sakura to fall to the ground, trying to breathe desperately as her face burned red. Oh, such concern for your teammate. How touching, the ninja sneered. But really? Such attachments only make you weak. I believe your brother proved as much. Hate flared inside Sasuke, as the grass ninja continued her taunt. What a disappointment you turned out to be. Your ancestors weep, the Uchiha clan should thank me for killing you. Foolish little worm. Foolish little brother, if you wish to kill me, hate me, detest me, and survive in an unsightly way. Run, run and cling to life. No, Sasuke whispered, angrily. He felt his chakra roar inside him. I am not weak. I am not a disappointment. Never again. For I am an avenger. Katan, Gakakyu no Jutsu. The massive fireball erupted from Sasuke's mouth, surprising the grass ninja and causing her to leapt away. This however was shown to Sasuke in the Sharingan, and despite his foe's superior speed and agility he had prepared the trap. Katan, Gakakyu no Jutsu. Again a fireball flew from Sasuke's mouth, hands discreetly moving to his weapon's pouch. The grass ninja leapt away once more, and Sasuke leapt with her, matching altitude as he made another set of hand seals. Katan, Hozenka no Jutsu. The grass ninja smirked as the firebirds flew for her. Futon, Daitapa. A massive blast of wind erupted from the grass ninja, and Sasuke cursed as his firebirds, and the kunai concealed within, were blown back. The wind caught him too and sent him flying into a tree trunk with a thud. Sasuke Kyuin. Sakura screeched, trying to get back on her feet but still apparently out for the count. Sasuke cursed under his breath. Damn it, just how strong is this woman? Such a disappointment, the ninja cooed, landing near Sakura. Sasuke tried to move as the pink-haired girl was picked up, but he found he didn't have to. The grass ninja threw Sakura to him. He managed to catch her, rolling along a very large branch to kill momentum. Sasuke-kun, she murmured, shaking. Sasuke felt the breath in his lungs freeze as a massive, horrifying killer intent came over him. He struggled against it, setting Sakura down as gently as he could before getting to his feet. The grass ninja was facing them from another nearby bough, deadly smirk in place. So, you can stand against my killer intent? A bit better, but still nothing compared to your brother. It seems all the power of the Uchiha clan went to him when it fell. And you are a poor replacement, the ninja cackled. Sasuke snarled, Sharingan eyes at full power. His vision seemed to clear a bit more, and despite his injuries he felt revitalized, strengthened. He saw what he had to do. He leapt up, throwing several kunai at the enemy ninja. She laughed, dodging easily. Sasuke threw 2 windmill shuriken after, and the grass ninja leapt above them. Eyes widening slightly at the second shuriken that emerged from their shadows, spinning after her. She leapt away again, senses perceiving Sasuke's strike too late. Yah! He cried, kicking his foe as hard as he could and directing her aerial path to another tree. The Sharingan showed his plan, and mentally a clock ticked. Almost there. Almost there. The grass ninja landed on the tree bough, right in front of the trunk. Sasuke threw a kunai with a wire attached up and swung around another massive tree, gaining altitude, until he was directly ahead and above the enemy. She stared curiously and gaped as the light of the sun got through the forest canopy just enough to reveal more wires. Sasuke yanked the wires as hard as he could, and like a closing net, whipped around the grass ninja and slammed her up against the trunk of the tree she stood on. Sasuke made an elaborate set of hand seals, taking a deep breath as he tucked the ends of the wires into his mouth. Katan, Ryuka no Jutsu. Flames roared along the wires, highlighting their paths of steel wire. They were wrapped around the kunai and shuriken Sasuke had thrown, guiding the fire in a vast network that raced around the forest, all of them finally slamming into the captive ninja at once. Yeah, the grass ninja screamed, the flames edging near the blue color of the temperature spectrum. Sasuke let the wires fall from his mouth and spun up his sword, imbuing it with chakra before throwing it with all his might, sticking the wire trailing his chikudo to his mouth and directing what was left of his chakra to the final blow. Katan, Kakiri no Jutsu. Sasuke roared, his flung sword turning into a fiery rocket that slammed into the grass ninja, causing a massive explosion. Kaboom! Sasuke shielded his eyes from the flash, letting the wind from the blast wash over him before he looked again. A large section of the tree trunk had been gouged out, burned into black charcoal. The smoke was heavy as Sasuke tugged on his wire and yanked his sword, blackened but otherwise unharmed, back to his hand. As the smoke cleared, Sasuke could see the enemy ninja bow her head. Then look up, face seemingly melted, but otherwise unharmed. Sasuke gawked, and felt the killing intent fall upon him even harder. Coo. The ninja laughed, shrugging off the wires and grinning through her its ruined face. I was wrong. You have great potential. Potential to grow far beyond Itachi. Your Sharingan is keener than his. The ninja leapt for Sakura, and Sasuke, exhausted as he was, managed to get in front of her protectively, sword held out as he panted. The ninja looked amused, before leaning her its head back and making a gagging noise. What? Who the hell are you? Sasuke demanded, shaking from the killer intent and disgust, as the grass ninja yanked a long, straight blade from its throat. It held it out in a ready stance. Come, let us continue. You can't let your guard down for even a second. Prey need to strain their minds all the time and run around. In the presence of a predator, the ninja finished with a smirk. Sasuke charged. Die! He bellowed. Shing! Sasuke gawked. His sword had been broken in two by a single slash from the enemy's blade. He backed away, still holding what was left of his chikudo out in challenge. Fool! Hand over the scroll and I'll let you live, the ninja cooed mockingly. Sasuke, still shaking from the killer intent, felt his hand reach for his pouch. Not so fast, you blood-licking freak! Shouted a familiar voice. Sakura looked up and smiled. Naruto! The blonde looked rather worse for wear, but was grinning all the same. The grass ninja scowled. You! How did you escape my summon? That was your snake? Oh, I'm sorry, but I had to gut it, Naruto smirked. Woulda made a kick-ass slide with it, but it went poof on me. By the way, it's rude to not identify yourself to other people. Right, Sasuke? Sasuke had no idea how Naruto could be so cheerful in the midst of this killing intent. It made Zabuza's feel like a mild breeze. But still, he somehow managed an annoyed glare. Shut up, you idiot. Hey! Show some gratitude. I'm here to save your ass, again I might add, from another girl. Sasuke snarled as the grass ninja blinked. Here he was putting out enough killing intent to bring an ANBU to their knees, and this boy wasn't affected. Of course not, he thought, he contains the Kyubi no Kitsune, and wields the Keyblade. One would make him immune to demon-level ki, and the other magnifies the power of his heart. I am Orochimaru. And I know all about you, Uzumaki Naruto, he hissed. Naruto smirked and flipped down in front of his teammates, Keyblade at the ready. I'm flattered, Oro. Whatever. Naruto paused. Since you already know my name, I'll just skip to the important part of my introduction. I'm here to kick your ass. Naruto leapt forward, Keyblade singing as he swung for Orochimaru's head. The older ninja blocked the strike with his own blade, but his eyes widened ever so slightly at the sight of his sword, the legendary Kusanagi, being chipped by the Keyblade. Impressive, he got out, as Naruto spun away from the strike in midair and swung for his waist. Orochimaru parried that as well, but Naruto simply spun away again, kicking off the tree branch and kicking back to him from another. Orochimaru continued blocking the blows, which began to increase in speed. Hiya! Yah! Take that! Naruto shouted, eyes completely on the fight. He ducked under a retaliatory blow from Orochimaru, and swung his chakra-enhanced blade into the bow underneath him, breaking the branch and sending his enemy stumbling backwards. Die! Naruto roared, leaping as he pushed off the Keyblade and summoned it back within Orochimaru's guard as they fell. The snake summoner twisted away and kicked Naruto in the stomach, sending him flying up into another tree. Orochimaru landed with a grimace, noting that the Kyuubi brat had managed to scratch him. "You'll pay for your insolence, little fool," he hissed, unleashing some of his full speed as he leapt after Naruto. The blonde was sticking to the side of a vast tree trunk, and leapt off, twisting in mid-air to meet Orochimaru's blow. Scrash! Sparks flew off the weapons as Keyblade and Kusanagi met, Naruto flipping over Orochimaru and spinning his weapon up with chakra imbuement. "I was saving this for the bastard, but guess I'll have to test it on you," the blonde shouted. He threw the Keyblade, burning blue with chakra, as hard as he could at Orochimaru. The snake summoner blocked the strike, noting that the Kusanagi, again, had been chipped from the force of the blow. The Keyblade flashed and vanished, reappearing in Naruto's hand, as he threw the Keyblade again, burning with chakra still. Clang! Flash! Clang! Flash! Naruto kept throwing the Keyblade, darting all around Orochimaru and keeping up his attack. He felt himself reach the limits of his speed, and made several Kage Bunshin, who all began the same attack. Orochimaru moved faster, but whether it was his own instincts or those of the Keyblade, Naruto knew that something had to give. Wham! Right in the shoulder, the Keyblade finally got through Orochimaru's guard, knocking him off the branch he'd been standing on and spinning him away. Naruto resummoned the Keyblade and spun it up once more, ready to deliver a death blow. Strike raid! Naruto bellowed, throwing the Keyblade. Kuchiyos no Jutsu! Orochimaru shouted, and the Keyblade met instead a giant snake, emerging from a great burst of smoke. The weapon bounced off its leathery hide as the serpent lunged, mouth open, for the blonde ninja. "Oh sure dash!" Naruto screamed as the snake's jaws caught him, swallowing him whole. His shocked clones were quickly dispatched by the snake as well. Sakura screamed in horror, as Orochimaru landed easily on the branch Sasuke and Sakura had retreated to. He smirked darkly. "Now, where were we?" he hissed. Ayam had calmed down a little, and was able to resume preparing and serving ramen to the hungry customers. Tucci smiled, hoping that it was simply a false alarm. "Hey, are you okay?" a customer asked, eyes concerned. Tucci turned and frowned as Ayam wobbled. The ramen cook's daughter managed a small smile. I'm. Oh, no," she whispered, before she fell forward. Tucci was barely able to save her from falling face first into the noodle fryers, and pulled Ayam back up. He shook her, noting her vacant eyes. Ayam? He turned to a ninja who was watching, bowl of pork ramen steaming before him. "Get a medic. A doctor. Someone. Damn it, not now. Not so soon. Naruto. You'd better be all right. Because I want to be the one to kick your ass when you return." Naruto blinked. The interior of the snake was, for a time, slimy, warm and smelled disgusting. Then, he found himself in a black abyss, a familiar red-haired, whiskered woman before him. "What did I tell you, simple fool?" The Kyuubi laughed. "You need my power, again. You weakling. Screw you, fox bitch. I don't need your help." Naruto shouted, struggling to get free and back into the real world. The Kyuubi smirked. "Idiot. Now that you're in my grasp, you have no choice in the matter." Naruto felt red-hot fire engulf his feet, and he looked down to see that familiar, hated red chakra oozing up his legs. He cursed and tried to yank himself out, but the grip tightened relentlessly, the red chakra continued to flow upwards. Naruto saw the Keyblade begin to shift into its curved, cruel, red form, and he struggled even harder, yelling and cursing as the chakra went past his waist and began to reach his chest. A warm, comforting hand took his free one, and Naruto felt himself calm down. The Kyuubi glared in disgust to someone at his right. "You! How did you get in here?" she snarled. A commanding yet soothing female voice answered her. "I am called by his heart," she responded, and the abyss began to lighten. Naruto still couldn't turn his head to see his savior, but he couldn't help but smile. Especially as the red chakra was gathered up into the Keyblade, isolated from his body. "Don't be afraid, Naruto," the woman spoke again. "Do not give in to the darkness. You have defeated her once already. She may be in a different guise, but your resolution has not failed. Trust in yourself. Naruto focused, the blue light from the mysterious woman filling him, as though recharging his chakra. She let go of his right hand, and he felt the reassuring weight of his true Keyblade fill it. Both weapons, Keyblade and Kyuubi blade, glowed brightly. You bitch! How dare you defy me? The Kyuubi roared, forced back into her giant fox form. The mysterious woman said nothing, only placing a comforting hand on Naruto's back. Naruto tried to say, and still found he couldn't turn to face her. He grimaced and tried harder, but still stayed firmly rooted forward. Why can't I see you? Laughter, like the tinkling of bells. You will. But for now, you have work to do, Naruto-kun. And then he was back in the snake's belly, the sick smell of acid filling his nostrils, and both keyblades flashing into existence in his hands. He focused, the chakra shaping itself within him. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Sakura sat over a downed Sasuke, sobbing as she held him. He was whimpering in pain, the bite marks on his neck changing form into a tattoo-like bruise, black with 3 small tadpoles swimming in a circle within it. Come to me when you want power, Sasuke-kun, Orochimaru cooed, licking his lips as his neck shrank back into his body. He turned to go and dispel his summon. Before a massive spike of chakra flowed over his senses. What? He seethed, as the snake that had swallowed Naruto began to expand. Its yellow eyes widened as the bulge in its throat grew to a giant size, the leathery flesh breaking and cracking until... Boom! A flood of Narutos emerged, the snake broken in two. It fell, puffing out of existence, as the Kage Bunshins, as one, leapt for Orochimaru, each wielding 2 keyblades, each with murder in their eyes. Futon, Daitapa! Orochimaru shouted, and the wind jutsu blew away the clones, all of them poofing into smoke. But the real Naruto's location was soon determined. Orochimaru looked up and saw him diving down, both keyblades blazing with chakra flames. The snake summoner leapt up as well, Kusanagi at the ready. Naruto lashed out with his weapons as Orochimaru swung upwards. An unholy screech permeated the forest as 3 mighty weapons clashed. The two broke apart and Naruto corkscrewed to the side where he stuck to a tree. Orochimaru flipped backwards and landed fluidly below the boy once more and glared heatedly at him. His Kusanagi receiving 2 long scratches from their bout. Naruto crossed the 2 blades in front of him and zeroed in on his target. Lifting the keyblades high above, the blonde roared as the chakra flames on the weapons rose. Time seemed to slow down, as Naruto swung both keyblades together, their unstable auras interacting, red and blue burning to white. The words for the attack left Naruto's lips, even though he had never heard them before. Brave shot! He roared, as the Kyuubi keyblade was converted entirely by the blue chakra of the original into burning white energy, which exploded out like a sun being born. Sakura dragged Sasuke behind the tree trunk and held him for dear life as the shockwave of the blast roared around them, a blinding light shining around them. The tree nearest the release had its sap superheated to the point it exploded, a massive fireball ascending above the forest as wooden shrapnel and debris flew everywhere. For miles around, if the flash was not seen then the boom certainly was heard, the wind from the explosion carrying the scent of fire and burnt flesh. Chakra senses across Konoha screamed at the burst of demonic energy, and even civilians with no shinobi training felt a shiver from the release. In the middle of the dying maelstrom, lying near a felled tree, a badly beaten and exhausted Naruto lay, the original keyblade lying at his side. He wheezed, blue eyes staring dazedly out at the small clearing he'd created, small fires still burning everywhere. His enemy emerged from the smoke, yellow eyes narrowed. Naruto gritted his teeth as he saw that Orochimaru, while appearing burnt alive, was unharmed beneath the blackened extra layer of skin. You have amused me, Kyuubi brat, he spat. He was on Naruto in a second, Naruto's neck held in his merciless grasp. The blonde choked, but still glared defiantly into the monster's eyes. He screamed in agony as Orochimaru slammed his fingers into his bare stomach, the seal reacting with the feeling of a fire in his belly. Consider yourself blessed that I cannot kill you now, the snake summoner hissed, carelessly flinging Naruto aside. He then vanished, a grudging smirk on his face. If not for the fact that the Kyuubi would destroy his soul, if the Keyblade didn't get to him first, he'd have marked Uzumaki as his next host. However, when Sasuke-kun comes to me... He laughed maniacally, as he sped through the forest. Sakura had managed to drag the unconscious Sasuke to the ground, and carrying him piggyback, which, despite the circumstances, made Sakura blush bright red. She made her way to the scene of the fight, limping from the injuries Orochimaru had inflicted on her. "Nah! Naruto!" she called out. Tearfully she spotted him, lying limp on the ground. She shuffled over, falling to her knees and checking his pulse. "Oh God! Naruto," she whispered, seeing his sorry state. She was exhausted from the fight, and hauling Sasuke around was difficult, even with her enhanced strength. But, she steeled herself to get both of her teammates somewhere hidden, before other teams arrived, drawn by the explosion. She dragged them both away, unaware of the gray-haired ninja watching her, and smiling ever so slightly as the sunlight glinted off his glasses. Chapter 14, Dark Thoughts Consume Us. Twilight Town was definitely one of Jiraiya's favorite haunts, ever since he'd begun world-hopping some time ago. The people were simple but friendly, the place was warm and quiet, and, most importantly, had a good population of attractive, young women for his research. What drew Jiraiya of Konoha here at the moment though, were the fruits of this town's labors. Or, more accurately, the grains. He threw back another rich twilight ale, enjoying the buzz in the back of his brain and the burn of the potent liquor down his throat. He smiled, shaking out his impressive mane of white hair with an appreciative hum. "Quite the brew you have, my dear," the Sannin complimented his hostess in the small bar near a wide field in the center of the town called the Sandlot. His finely tuned ninja senses could pick out the weak auras of some of the kids training for some fighting contest. The hostess blushed prettily in response. "Why thank you, Mr. Jiraiya. Would you like more, please?" Jiraiya grinned, holding out his mug. He then frowned. "Well, I see you're wasting no time," a high-pitched, amused voice said behind him. Jiraiya turned and smiled at the short, red-clad mouse hidden behind an illusion of a nondescript man. "Mickey! I wondered when you were going to get your tail here," Jiraiya commented. He motioned to the seat next to him, eyes turning to the hostess. "Ruby, can you give us some privacy?" The silver-haired woman smiled and nodded, turning and heading to tend to her other customers. Mickey walked up and took his seat, the illusion doing the same. Jiraiya whistled. "Ha! Not bad. Not quite as good as a henge, but then it doesn't really need to be." Mickey sighed, scratching an oversized ear. Magic and chakra can be shaped in the same ways, but in the end they're still different forces, the Mouse King surmised. He then frowned, looking about the bar carefully. "Relax, I cast a privacy jutsu," Jiraiya said, taking another draw of his beer. "So, how did you get out of running your kingdom to come see me?" "Simple. I left without telling anyone." Mickey raised an eyebrow at the white-haired ninja. "Since the last time I met you I woke up with a hangover the size of a Gyumi ship on top of a volcano. In a Cupid costume, don't forget that," Jiraiya added with a grin. Mickey snorted. "Minnie won't let me forget, that's for sure. Besides, as I recall you didn't turn out much better." Jiraiya cringed. "I swear I had no idea what possessed me to enter that chocobo race. Though you have to admit, I did pretty well." "You blew up the racetrack," Mickey pointed out flatly. "So? I still won," the Sannin insisted. Mickey rolled his eyes again, thinking that if Jiraiya were not his friend he'd have knocked him into orbit with the Keyblade a long time ago. He still might. "But, business before pleasure and all that. The Heartless have been idle too long," Mickey said at last. "They slowed down after they conquered Hollow Bastion, but it's nothing like this. The world they destroyed just before they stopped was close to the worlds Leon, Yuffie, Aerith, and Cloud all came from." Jiraiya hummed thoughtfully. "At the same time, that organization I've been tracking, the one with the interest in the Biju of my world, have been sighted on other worlds. Working with the Heartless, or against them?" Mickey asked. Jiraiya sighed, shaking his head. "A little of both. A few worlds they've been defending from the Heartless in exchange for tribute, while a number of their members have helped the buggers conquer and destroy a few more. What the connection is, I haven't been able to figure out," the Sannin reported, taking out his pipe and chewing thoughtfully on the end. The Mouse King also adopted a thoughtful expression. "I've locked the keyholes of as many worlds as I can, but there are only so many I can seal," Mickey sighed. "And if the Heartless get their hands on another keybearer? It won't matter. Another one, HM?" Jiraiya asked. Mickey nodded. "The legends do say that there were more than one. Possibly hundreds at one time, though for what purpose no one knows." "Legends? They've descended into myth by now," Jiraiya snorted. He'd filled and lit his pipe, and let the soothing tobacco fill his senses. He blew a smoke ring, still looking thoughtful. Still no sign of Ansem? The Sannin asked. Mickey shook his head. Nothing. Considering how he remained behind to make sure the last civilians got off-world, I'd say my old friend is. But something in my gut just tells me he's still around. The mouse shrugged. How? I haven't the foggiest. It just does. Jiraiya smiled around his pipe. Gut feelings have their place too, he noted sagely. Mickey smiled back. Yeah, hey you. Both Sannin and Mouse King turned at the source of the noise. A blonde kid with piercing blue eyes, white sleeveless coat, and black knit cap on his head was scowling at them. Yeah, you too. What do you think you're doing here? Jiraiya raised his eyebrows at Mickey, who closed his eyes and laughed silently, gloved hand over his mouth. Sitting and talking. And drinking, Jiraiya explained slowly, as though speaking to a complete moron. Which the blonde seemed to wish to prove himself as. You're outsiders. You're supposed to announce yourselves to the disciplinary committee before entering. He said self-importantly. A taller, tanned youth with black hair and red shirt, accompanied by a blue-haired, red-eyed girl in blue strode up behind him. Yeah. Get up and show us some ID, before we knock you flat, you know. The red-clad boy stated proudly, puffing himself up. Squashed, the blue-haired girl stated in a monotone. Jiraiya smirked unpleasantly. Mickey rolled his eyes. Jiraiya. The mouse said warningly. Jiraiya just grinned. Identification, HM. I'll have you know Miss Ruby is quite familiar with me. Isn't that right, Daisy dear? You'll vouch for me, won't you? The silver-haired woman clicked her tongue disapprovingly, shaking her head, as she walked up to the trio. Now what have I told you three about coming in here? You're not legal aged yet, so out. Stop bothering Mr. Jiraiya and his friend. Hey! This is disciplinary committee business. Back off, you know. Red said with nervous bravado. Blondie nodded and crossed his arms. We know what's best for this town, you don't. We're taking in this geezer and his buddy. Jiraiya's smirk became positively lethal. The disciplinary committee took no notice. Mickey, again, rolled his eyes. Jiraiya. The mouse warned once more. The Sannin shrugged and grinned. Meh. Waste of my time to teach these punks a lesson, Jiraiya stated dismissively. I need to be going anyway. See you same time again. Maybe earlier, Mickey answered carefully. The blonde growled. Hey! Who you calling punks, you old dash? Jiraiya vanished with a final wink at Ruby, a few leaves kicked by a breeze and a generous sum of coin on the table all to mark his absence. The disciplinary committee found that the old geezer's friend had also vanished. Ruby summarily kicked them out, leaving Cypher Almasi to angrily swear he'd make that old coot pay the price for humiliating him. Twilight Town's clock tower, on top of its train station, was a huge landmark and fantastic draw for tourists. A marble spear jutting into the sky, its cheerful bells could be heard miles away. On a ledge near a few winged statues surrounding the top of the tower, a small girl with long brown hair, bright green eyes, and an orange dress sat, kicking her feet. Now what did I say about sitting up here? Asked a calm, masculine voice. The girl turned her head and grinned happily. Mr. Jiraiya. You're back. She said happily, getting to her feet and rushing over to the old man. She gave him a hug, and Jiraiya returned it gingerly. Exactly what the small girl saw in him he'd never know. Well, I did save her life, he thought to himself with a mental chuckle. Yes, but not for long, he told her. She immediately began to pout. But you're never around. And I just moved here. And I don't have any friends, and mommy's always busy, and dash. Whoa, take it easy Olet-chan. Jiraiya laughed, patting her on the head. Look, if you want some friends, you just have to take charge. Be confident. A mischievous glint entered the old ninja's eye. Or beat up that annoying blonde kid. That'll earn you plenty of friends, I'm sure. Olet looked unsure about it. Beat him up? But he's head of discipline and dash. And it's like me declaring myself ruler of Candyland, Jiraiya snorted. Doesn't mean a damn thing. Knock him flat, I know you can do it. The girl wavered a bit, but nodded, determination appearing in her eyes. I'll do it. Besides, he's always mean to me. That's the spirit. Jiraiya grinned. Now then. Your mother gave you that envelope, right? Olette nodded, and fished a thick, tightly bound envelope out of her school bag, lying next to a gargoyle. She handed it to Jiraiya, whose grin turned slightly lecherous. Mr. Jiraiya? Are you okay? What are you smiling about? Oh, ahem, nothing, the Sannin said, composing himself. He then gave her another big, caring smile, which she returned. Now, what did I teach you? He prompted. The girl took a deep breath. Hit the nose with the flat of your palm only. Heads are hard, stomachs and groins are soft and hurt lots. Good girl. Jiraiya enthused. Olette moved forward and hugged him again, tightly. Please, promise you'll visit again soon, Jiraiya? The girl asked, plaintively. Jiraiya's grin became a soft smile, as he patted her back with genuine affection. I promise, he said. After all, gallant Jiraiya keeps his promises. With a heroic pose that made Olette giggle and clap, he took off, hopping from rooftop to rooftop. As he traveled, he opened the envelope and peeked inside, lecherous grin reappearing. Ha ha ha. Always knew she'd come through, ooh hoo hoo. Jiraiya giggled. Now, the Sannin did have a soft spot for hard luck kids, and Olette certainly qualified as such. Her father, a farmer, had died and her mother had been forced to sell their meager homestead and move to Twilight Town, where it was somewhat difficult to find work at times. He would quite happily have helped support them, the money he made from Ika Ika alone giving him a fortune that rivaled Scrooge McDuck's, but Olette's mother was not willing to accept charity. Fortunately, she wasn't shy about tastefully photographing her beautiful self. Ah, wonderful inspiration, Jiraiya sighed, as he headed east again. But not before he paused by the sandlot. Looking down, he spotted the blonde kid and his gang. With a smirk, he summoned a toad and gave him a few quick instructions. The amphibian complied. So then I said, hey, if you can't take the heat, get the hell out of here, Cypher was relating to his cronies, before he felt something land on his head with a wet plop. An orange face peeked at him over the brim of his hat. His eyes widened. Gawa. Get it off. Get it off. Get it off. Satisfied, Jiraiya turned and headed back for his Gyumi ship. Sakura was, for once, glad to have been the top kunoichi at the Ninja Academy. She'd memorized the emergency survival manual, which outlined how to survive with wounded teammates in hostile territory. Drained of chakra as she was, Sakura still managed to drag Naruto and Sasuke to a hollow in between the roots of a gigantic tree. She gathered as much moss and as many branches as she could to conceal them, and make their hiding spot resemble just another part of the forest floor. That finished, she began to examine her teammates, both of whom were still out cold. All this was done while she was very seriously considering panicking. Inner Sakura kept her calm and focused though, yelling encouragement and advice the inner personality had memorized. Right. Pulses faint but steady, blood pressure stable, he's still got a high fever. Sakura looked over Sasuke's face and blushed slightly. You know. Inner Sakura began, a perverted leer on her face. Not now, Sakura chided. Inner Sakura sighed. Oh fine. Humph. We could die at any moment and you're not taking the chance to, you know. Now is not the time, damn it. You are such a prude. Come on, check out the goods of our future husband, Shinaro. No. Now shut up. We still have to check Naruto. The pink-haired girl moved to Naruto, blushing slightly at his severely torn clothing. It exposed his tanned, and surprisingly muscled, body. She then frowned as her eyes fell on his flat stomach. What the heck is that? I don't think that Orochimaru guy had enough time to draw this elaborate a seal on him. And why? I don't know. It doesn't look anything like Sasuke-kun's seal, Sakura thought with a frown. Admittedly, she didn't know a whole lot about seals, but she had studied enough to know that the larger they were, the longer the preparation and the more resources needed to create it. Naruto's seal couldn't have been created in only a few minutes. And he wasn't bitten, inner Sakura pointed out as well. Sakura frowned, running a hand over Naruto's belly. Cautiously, she extended her chakra senses towards the seal. Scarlet, flames dash. She quickly withdrew her senses, shaking and taking deep breaths. The killing intent put out by Orochimaru paled in comparison to the sheer menace she'd felt. Sakura scooted back, staring down at her trembling hands. She looked back at the unconscious Naruto. Before turning back to Sasuke, shouldn't we check him more thoroughly, after that? Look, I'm all alone, I have no idea what's wrong with them, we're stranded in the middle of the Chunin exams dash. I have enough stress as it is. She bandaged up Sasuke's cuts and bruises as best she could, before reluctantly turning back to Naruto's still form. She blinked at the fact that the cuts she'd seen on him before were all gone. She bit her lower lip and shook her head, before turning to her pack and rummaging for some food. After all the adrenaline, her hunger had finally caught up. All throughout Training Field 44, night was falling. More than half the teams had been eliminated in the first few hours alone, falling to other ninjas or the natural hazards in the forest. The tall, lonely tower in the center was silhouetted against the half-moon, a light that cast dark shadows wherever it touched. Into the foreboding forest Temari stared, arms crossed over the windowsill. She rested her chin on her forearms. Shouldn't you be asleep? Temari rolled her eyes and turned her head to regard her brother. Speak for yourself. Kankuro shook his head and walked next to her, peering out the window with her in silence for a few moments. What are you looking at? He asked. Temari pointed to an outcropping on the tower, and Kanekuro's eyes widened. He's been sitting there ever since that chakra explosion, Temari spoke, her eyes shifting back to Gaara from the forest. He sat on the ledge, one arm on his folded knee, his unblinking eyes staring into the darkness beyond. That's pretty weird. Even for him, Kankuro allowed. Temari bit her lip. Do you think that it had something to do with that blonde kid? Kankuro raised an eyebrow at his sister and scoffed. Him? What makes you think he had anything to do with it? Temari frowned, lowering her chin into her arms even more. You saw how Gaara reacted around him. And that weapon of his? Kankuro rolled his eyes. Temari, the Keyblade's a myth. It's not like some giant key-shaped piece of crap could actually do anything. Temari snorted. Made you back down? No, Gaara made me back down, Kankuro retorted. I'm telling you, that punk's dead and his stupid weapon's been taken for a souvenir. Temari frowned thoughtfully and turned her gaze back to her youngest brother. He was still there, still staring, a strange look on his face. Rather than being devoid of emotion or filled with insane glee, his face had an expectant look. Probing, almost curious. Maybe you're right, she mumbled, standing up. She walked over to her bunk and unceremoniously slumped down in it. He's probably right. But still, it was an old story her mother had told her when she was little. When her father was not so mad, so cold. Before Gaara, when Kankuro was still a baby. It was one of the few pleasant memories she had from her childhood, filled with strict training and shadowy political games well before her father decided he wanted a demon container weapon. It had a brave young man, who was given a weapon of incredible power and chaotic good. He was chosen to wield it, as his world died around him and his friends were lost to darkness. Across world after world he fought to save those he cared for, to save everything from plunging into eternal darkness. He met so many different peoples and saw so many wondrous things. Wish-granting spirits and lamps, fish people who lived under the ocean, dragons and witches and demons. The story always ended with the young man saving the day. Often at great personal risk and loss, but always did he pull through. Always did good triumph over evil. When she died, when Gaara was born. When her father saw his children as merely means to an end, as tools. She hated her mother a little. Hated her for telling such wonderful stories, filling her with hope and happiness, and having all that good feeling shattered into oblivion by her father's ambitions and her uncle's hatred. She tried so hard to forget, but that blonde boy, he's probably dead anyway, she told herself firmly. Those were just stories. There are no happy endings. And there is no Keyblade. With this she went to sleep, all the while Gaara sat outside the window, staring into the abyss. Anko had seen a lot in her years of service to Konoha. Particularly as an apprentice to one of the most infamous, psychotic missing nin the village had ever had. The genin team before her was nothing she hadn't seen before. Or rather, what was left of them in the forest clearing, near the walls of the village. And that was the problem. We found them this morning, a cat-masked ANBU reported flatly. Judging by the decay the med ninjas found, they can't have been dead more than a day or two. Just in time for the Chunin exams, Anko noted flatly. The jutsu that did this. I've seen it before. Then. It is him? Asked an owl-faced ANBU, a hint of nervousness in his young voice. Anko rolled her eyes. His name is Orochimaru, she hissed in disgust. The ANBU stiffened, as Anko rolled her eyes. Newbies. She bent down and examined the corpses more closely. Her brown eyes narrowed as she took a deep whiff with her nose. Grass nin, how can you tell? The owl Anbu asked. Anko rolled her eyes. Because they smell like the grass nin at the exams. She stood up and glowered. Combined with that explosion a few hours ago and looks like the old snake bastard's back in town. She turned to the cat Anbu. You, report this to the Hokage, she ordered, and the ninja vanished. Anko turned to the owl-masked ninja with a slightly sadistic smirk. And you? Come with me. We're checking out some things. Wouldn't you prefer a full team? He asked nervously. Anko's smirk didn't waver. Sorry, I'm pretty sure my rank is Tokubetsu Jounin. What's yours? Just Chunin, ma'am, he replied nervously, Anko's killing intent, and no doubt reputation, affecting his verbal skills. The trench coat-clad Kunoichi grinned. Then what the hell are you still standing there for? Get going. The owl Anbu was off like a shot, Anko right behind him. Newbies, she thought, only this time in twisted amusement as she savored the fear in the younger ninja. You told me you wouldn't interfere. Maleficent smirked, not bothering to look at the speaker in the tree behind her. And I didn't. Orochimaru smirked. He'd played this game many times with the witch, and truth be told he enjoyed it on a perverse level. She was almost as cunning, ruthless, and powerful as he was. She'd make a good host body. If not for the fact that he wanted to wield chakra as well as magic, and that her body was completely wrong for taijutsu. He was a ninja before anything else, and preferred the life he'd chosen. His musings were cut off by Maleficent's next statement. I am merely here to observe. You really expect me to believe that? The snake Sannin hissed. You think I don't know about your influence on Kabuto? Maleficent raised her eyebrows. He has considerable talent. If you are to finally wield the Heartless, I'd like to know just what kind of army you've built. The strength of their hearts, among other things. She finally turned around, gaze icy cold on the snake Sannin, who returned the gesture with a murderous glare full of his killing intent. You know that won't work on me. Don't forget who it is who controls the Heartless. Don't forget that you are on my world, Orochimaru sneered. Even the Heartless are not invincible. Maleficent smirked. I see. You are not completely absent of sense. She turned back again, and the Sannin seethed. I will make an offering, a show of goodwill, Maleficent spoke then. Orochimaru frowned. What kind of offering? I will grant the genin team from your village the power to summon and control the Heartless. If they prove themselves competent, then I will grant you the same power. If not, you will have to find some other means of convincing me that my time has not been wasted on you. Orochimaru smirked, even as insane rage blazed in his yellow eyes. Very well. The witch vanished, and Orochimaru left, in his mind repeating his vow that when he gained power over the Heartless, he'd enjoy watching Maleficent die. Slowly, but for now. He had an old student to reunite with. Irika-sensei. The scarred man looked up from his paperwork and smiled happily at his favorite student. Ex-student, he reminded himself, but he'd prefer not to dwell on that. He smiled at him happily. Naruto. What brings you here? The orange and black-clad ninja swung in through the open window and landed easily on the floor. He grinned broadly back at him. Just visiting. Irika frowned at his student. They'd talked little about his mission to Wave Country, and Irika was nearly to the breaking point when it came to demanding answers from Naruto. The official report alone had nearly driven him to confronting Kakashi directly, though there was little he could do. Kakashi had prepared the genin as best he could, Irika knew this, but it still hurt to be unable to do anything for his students. Shouldn't you be meeting Kakashi? Naruto snorted. He never shows up on time. Well, he does, just not when he says he will. Irika grimaced. Kakashi's punctuality was infamous. He took a deep breath, and gave Naruto a serious look. Naruto. Kakashi mentioned something in his report to the Hokage. Irika noted how Naruto's expression became stiff. Is there anything you want to talk about? Irika asked. Naruto bit his lip. Is this about the Kyuubi? Have you spoken about it to anyone? No, Naruto replied. He smiled before summoning the Keyblade in his hand. See? It's all. It's not like it was with the fox. It's chakra. Irika asked. Naruto nodded and sucked a deep breath through his teeth. She I think it talked to me in a dream. Irika also took a deep breath. I see. It offered me power. To let me use its power. Naruto looked fearfully at Irika, who merely stared at Naruto expectantly. And, aren't you wondering what I said? No. Because I know you said no, the Chunin replied, a soft smile on his face. Naruto nodded, smiling back. What I want to know, Naruto, is why you haven't talked to anyone else about this. Or why your sensei didn't talk about it. Irika shouted. Naruto cringed. I only had it this morning. Irika sighed. Still. You should tell the Hokage about this. I know, it's just. I don't want the old man to worry. Naruto sighed. And really? What can he do? I can't get rid of the Keyblade. And I might use the Kyuubi's power again. I don't want to but what can I do? Is there some kind of jutsu I can use for this? Irika closed his eyes sadly. I don't know. He reopened his eyes, and moved around his desk. He took Naruto into a hug, and Naruto tensed a little at the contact. But we'll find out, I promise, Irika said finally. Naruto nodded, smiling back. It wasn't the first nightmare he had since he returned, and even after telling the Hokage, even after checking the seal, they continued. There was nothing that could be done, except trust in the fourth Hokage. And Naruto. Irika grimaced, the light from the waning moon shining through his apartment window. He couldn't see the forest of death from here, but his memories provided enough background to imagine what his students might be going through. He'd caught a few snippets of gossip saying how tough the competition was this year, not to mention that practically every ninja had felt that glimmer of the Kyuubi's power. Did you use the Kyuubi's power, Naruto? Willingly, he wouldn't. Irika knew this, but the Chunin could remember the terror of the Kyuubi's power. More than its ability to topple mountains or cause tsunami with its tails, the suffocating chakra aura that stretched for miles made it so legendary, so terrifying. It made you feel utterly insignificant, like the ant underneath the heel of a boot. The surge of the Kyuubi's power was nowhere near as strong as when the beast first attacked the village, but it was painfully familiar. And yet, he shook his head. What the panicking Anbu and ninja had seemed to miss was the fact that the Kyuubi's chakra hadn't been as hostile as before. It was muted, as though mixed with something else, something less malevolent. He had no idea what had happened. The Anbu were keeping everything silent, but all the same. Irika was comforted by the fact that, if Naruto had truly been killed, there would have been a much bigger explosion. How could Naruto go out with anything less? Despite the fear he had for his surrogate little brother, he couldn't help but smile at this. And hope, as tenuous as it seemed, grew inside him. Why hello, Anko-chan. Anko's eyes narrowed, the familiar hiss of her sensei's voice behind her sparking anger inside her heart. He stood before her, dressed like a jounin from Hokage, a sinister smirk on his face. She smirked back. You son of a whore. I'm actually glad you're back. Oh really? Orochimaru asked, amused. Anko nodded. Before blurring and slamming an elbow into the snake Sanin's face. So I can kill you. You fucking bastard. She roared, attacking with furious, agile and serpentine strikes, kicks, and punches. Orochimaru, amused, blocked every attack with ease, finally catching her right wrist and yanking her stomach into his knee in a quick, violent moment. Oof. Anko huffed, as Orochimaru held her. Her skin crawled at his touch, and she glared hatefully up into the face of her former sensei. You've grown soft, weak, the snake Sanin chuckled. Still the mere girl I knew so long ago. Well, I can't say I'm surprised. He bent down and whispered in her ear, sadistic amusement in his eyes as she squirmed, trying to get away. You were a failed experiment. Little more than a broken test tube, a discarded blueprint. Shut the fuck up. Anko roared, snakes lashing out of her sleeves and driving into Orochimaru. Or at least they would, if he had not leapt away and swatted the hissing beasts away with ease. His smirk never faded. Oh, touched a sore nerve did I? Yes, I imagine it took some time to recover trust from this pitiful village. But they'll never fully trust you, Anko-chan. They're ignorant, weak, pathetic. I'd take every one of them, hooker and jerks included, over you, she hissed back, throwing a kunai. Orochimaru caught it between his fingers easily, tossing it aside. I'm sure. A pack of vermin is stronger together. But still no match for a predator, the Sannin chuckled. Anko smirked. Oh really? I hear a certain fox gave you some trouble today. Losing your touch in your old age, asshole? The Tokubetsu Jounin taunted. A flash of real rage entered Orochimaru's eyes, a sign of his she'd been able to read, and her grin widened. A minor setback only, and I achieved my goal, Orochimaru went on, the anger dying in his eyes. But he'd lost control, which he never did before. Oh? The Sharingan will someday be mine, the Sannin replied with a sickly smile. And the Kyuubi brat, well, his toy makes him no champion. One day, he too will fall, like all of you pitiful mortals. Too bad you'll never see that day, ha bastard. Anko grinned. Sojuso no Jutsu. Two black snakes leaped out of her sleeves, locking onto Orochimaru's wrists with their fangs. Another pair of reptiles emerged and bit into Anko's wrists, and her smile became more peaceful. It's over. You lose. You should have never taught me this technique. I suppose not. You could have saved your pitiful life if I hadn't, Orochimaru grinned. He yanked the snake's fangs out of his wrists and tugged Anko to him, catching her in an embrace. Her eyes widened as he grinned, and bent down to whisper in her ear. Cancel the Chunin exams for this, and I will destroy the village. He raised his head to smile down at his failed student, enjoy her hopeless expression. And instead met her smirk as a dozen explosive notes lit up in her jacket. Kaboom! The explosion wiped out the equivalent of a city block of the forest, and everything within it. Leaving the real Mitarashi Anko and the almasked ANBU to stare at the devastation. Did you get him? The ANBU asked. Anko sighed, eyes genuinely melancholy. No. Check the chakra signatures through the flames. He used a clone too. The whole thing was just to send a message. A message? The ANBU asked. Anko nodded grimly. Yes. We'd better alert the Hokage. Come on. Chapter 15, The Forest of Death Part II Take 2. Sakura had tried to get some sleep, lying blushingly between the two boys. It was a fitful rest, especially when she brushed up against Naruto or Sasuke and had to fight the urge to latch on, as though they were big teddy bears. Warm, muscular, strong. Shut up already. Honestly, was she so frustrated and scared that she'd lost all reason? Cuddling up to Naruto, with this cheering thought she managed to fall asleep. Only to be awakened as the wires she'd attached to her fingers were tugged. The traps. A loud boom reverberated through the shelter as her log trap was triggered. She extended her chakra senses and grimaced. 3 signatures, all fresh. Oh, cute, really cute, jeered a rough, young male voice. Sakura quickly checked Naruto and Sasuke again. Damn it, both still out? She popped her only soldier pill in her mouth and steeled herself. As quietly as she could, she created a single bunshin to peek out of the front entrance of the shelter. As she eased herself through a gap in the roots behind the shelter, she heard a few of her spring-launched kunai traps go off, and the chakra signatures of the assailants moved. Gah, this is so annoying. Look, hand over Uchiha Sasuke, and no one gets hurt. We'll let you keep your pitiful lives. That same voice shouted again. Sakura backed into the bushes surrounding the small clearing, and finally spied the assailants. Those sound mean from before. Kabuto had pointed them out, just before the exam had begun. A messy, black-haired boy wearing gray and black camouflage fatigues stood in the center, hands wrapped in bandages. A pale girl with long black hair and similar fatigues stood at his left, glaring. Finally, a hunched-over figure, covered in bandages to the point he resembled a mummy, with an unusual metal gauntlet over his right arm, surveyed the area with his one visible eye. Sakura frowned and formed a few hand seals. Jutsu activated, she cleared her throat. What do you want with Uchiha Sasuke? She asked, her voice echoing around the clearing. The mummy guy adjusted his gauntlet as the spiky-haired guy snorted. Funny. Ventriloquist jutsu. It won't do much good against ninja from the Sound Village, he smirked. Sakura frowned. What do you want with Uchiha Sasuke? She repeated, running her fingers over her equipment pouch and mentally doing an item check. 4 kunai, 4 shuriken, 2 explosive notes, 2 flash notes. She'd used most of the remaining weapons to set up traps around their shelter. Even now, as the sound kunoichi took another step forward, another trap was tripped and another set of kunai was fired. She dodged, and cursed. The spiky-haired guy growled, holding his hands up. From this distance Sakura could just make out tiny holes in his palms. Enough of this. Let's just summon them and kill them all, he stated. The kunoichi cringed. I don't know. I mean, are you dash? Screw it, he shouted, cutting her off. He held out a hand over the ground before him. The spot under his hand's shadow erupted into black smoke, which coalesced into a small, squat being. It was hunched over, two glowing yellow eyes peering out from twitching antennae. A pair of clawed hands grasped at the air, as the creature twitched and shook. All right, find her, he ordered. The creature hopped forward, looking around curiously. Its pupilless gaze looked on Sakura, and she shivered. The spiky-haired boy smirked. There! From his outstretched hands a huge blast of wind issued, which Sakura barely dodged. Forced into the open she quickly made 10 bunshins and rushed the sound ninja, throwing a flash note above her illusions. As it flashed she kept her eyes closed, using her chakra senses to steer her in the direction of her targets. Gah! Die already! Screamed the spiky-haired guy, and a blast of chakra-enhanced air came forward again. Sakura dove, covering her head as her bunshins poofed out of existence. She grimaced as cuts appeared in her skin, before the wind lashing ceased. She leapt back up, throwing 4 shuriken at the spiky-haired ninja. He dodged, off balance. A burst of chakra to her legs and Sakura was on him, her fist slamming into his stomach. With her other fist she slammed his jaw and leapt off to avoid his teammates from. Gah! Catching us, Inner Sakura said sullenly. The mummy ninja had her by the ponytail. A backhand to the face sent her sprawling. Not bad, for a leaf ninja, sneered the kunoichi. She sighed as the spiky-haired sound ninja moaned. Oh, would you stop being such a pussy, Zaku? Look who's talking, Kin, he muttered back, getting to his feet. That little bitch coulda broke my jaw. Humph. You complain too much, the mummy ninja stated flatly. Get control of your summon. Zaku looked over and groaned. The creature couldn't be seen. All right. Dosu, you kill the bitch. I'll deal with the Uchiha and the idiot. He got up and stalked over the shelter. Sakura struggled, trying to get out of Dosu's grip. Kin kicked her in the ribs, making her cry out. Silly little girl, playing ninja, she sneered. She grabbed Sakura's hair and yanked her close, breathing menacingly in Sakura's hair. Having such long, soft hair. Doesn't look like you take things very seriously, Kin further said with a smirk. Sakura kept her eyes closed, teeth gritted in pain. Before she slammed a fist into Kin's stomach, using a kunai to slash off her ponytail in the same movement. She leapt to tackle Dosu, but her ears exploded in blood as his gauntlet came near. Ugh! She shrieked, as he punched her back. Dosu closed his visible eye, as though he was smirking. Shame. She's not too bad looking. Little flat, Dosu commented. Sakura grimaced, holding her ears. She saw Zaku approach the shelter, hands outstretched. She began shrieking out in warning, not able to hear herself but hoping she could alert Sasuke and Naruto in time. A flash of green entered her vision, and Sakura saw the last person she'd ever thought she'd see. OSSU. I am Rock Lee, Konoha's beautiful green beast. And I am here to save my beloved Sakura-san. Please retreat now. The green-clad shinobi declared, assuming that same strange fighting stance from before, with one arm behind his back and the other forward. Absently, Sakura noted the squirrel on his shoulder. Lee? Why is there a squirrel on your shoulder? She asked, almost numbly. Lee grinned. It was this squirrel, my beloved Sakura-chan, who led me to your location, so that I could defend you. Yes, the power of squirrels is the power of youth. Dream, yes. This must be a dream. Inner Sakura mumbled. Why can't I have dreams where I'm between Sasuke-kun and Narudash? Finish that sentence and die, Outer Sakura thought viciously. While our favorite pink-haired genin was contemplating a nervous breakdown, the sound genin collectively blinked at Lee. Even the heartless they had summoned stared, as though unable to make anything of Konoha's self-proclaimed beautiful green beast. Did someone drop you on your head when you were a baby? Kin asked seriously. Lee shook his head. No, fair sound Kunoichi-san. Though Gai-sensei and I do often drop ourselves on our heads as part of our rigorous training. Shall I demonstrate it to you? He asked in equal seriousness. Kin blushed at the same time she sweat dropped, while her male companions glowered. Enough of this. Kill the fruitcake and be done with it. Zaku shouted, air cannons at the ready. Lee smiled confidently, his squirrel squeaking in a seemingly encouraging tone. You will not find that easy. Konoha Senpu. Lee shouted, leaping into the air and spinning to meet the sound ninja leaping into the air. He kicked Zaku in the stomach, sending him flying into a tree directly ahead, and shifted his course to kick Dosu, sending him flying to the hard ground below. Kin gawked but had no time to react as Lee's third and final kick connected with her chest, slamming into the ground and tumbling away. Gah! This freak's tougher than he looks, Zaku mumbled, shaking his head. Sakura too was stunned by Lee's performance, and couldn't help her blush as he turned and gave her a thumbs up, perfect teeth glinting in the sunlight. Do not worry, Sakura-san. I will let no harm come to you. This I promise. Well, too bad it's a promise you're gonna break. Dosu stated, as the sound ninja regrouped. They summoned several smaller, purple creatures that floated above them, similar to the black demon from before. Zaku smirked. Nightmare chorus, attack. Oh, for crying out loud. Lee! Where did he go? Tenten glowered, narrowing her eyes and scanning the forest. Niji had his Byakugan activated as he leapt with her. The idiot said he would only go to the bathroom, Niji snorted. Probably got lost or. Tenten prompted. Or he's fighting to defend Team 7 from those sound ninja from before, Niji commented, shifting course and accelerating through the foliage. Tenten followed, biting her lower lip. Can you see Naruto? The blonde ninja. The Hyuga frowned, but widened his area of scan. Yes. I'd recognize his chakra signature anywhere, though it's dangerously low, like the Uchihas. So that explosion yesterday, they seem connected, Niji allowed, a frown growing on his face. 3 other chakra signatures appeared in his vision. He raised an eyebrow. Looks like some of our fellow Leaf Ninja are giving the idiot some assistance, before us, he commented. Tenten nodded, her keen eyes picking out the battlefield. I can see that. Whoa. What the hell are those things? Niji focused in. He could see the creatures moving about, but as far as what they were, they only appeared as black shapes in his bloodline's vision. Lee fell back from Dosu, clutching his ears. Sakura had gotten some distance from the sound ninja, stumbling after him. Though Lee had valiantly fought the floating purple creatures, their use of directed sound as a weapon slowed him down enough for Dosu to get in a hit with his melody gauntlet. "Ow, Lee!" She called out, her hearing gradually returning. However, it was like being underwater, everything she heard was distorted. She caught Zaku yell something, but her eyes widened at their results. A dozen more of the same creatures from before appeared, the shadows converging on Lee. Lee! No! Sakura shouted. She pushed some chakra into her fist and brought it down on one of the demons. The energy passed into the creature and turned it into dust. Encouraged, Sakura leapt after another before a fist slammed into the back of her neck. She fell, tasting blood in her mouth. She snarled in defiance, trying to get to Lee, but her assailant wouldn't let her go, and the creatures were closing in. Thunder! Blasts of lightning dropped on the dark creatures, blasting them to dust. The pressure on her neck abruptly vanished. Sakura didn't pause. She got back up and crawled over to Lee, checking him, and then dragging him out of the line of fire as Team 10 joined the battle. She couldn't help her incredulous expression as she saw Ino. Is she calling down lightning from the sky? How the hell is she doing that? Die! Ino screamed. Fire! 3 blasts of flame burst from her staff at Zaku, who deflected them with his air cannons. Chuji launched himself at Zaku next, calling out Nikuden Sensha, while Shikamaru threw kunai to make Kin fall back. Chuji did little better against Zaku than Ino, his bulk spinning in place against the force of the sound nin's hand cannons. However, it did allow Ino to attack from the side. Leaping down, blonde hair whipping out behind her like a flag, and her staff blazing with power, she shouted her attack once more. Fire! 3 blasts hit the ground under Zaku's feet, blasting him into a sprawling heap. Chuji broke through, still in meat tank form and barreling for Sakura and Lee. Ack! She shouted, dragging the unconscious taijutsu specialist out of the path of the Akimichi. They tumbled, and she found herself under the extremely heavy Lee. Gah! She muttered, struggling out from under the mercifully still unconscious Lee. Oh, sorry Sakura. Chuji shouted. Sakura turned to glare at Chuji, before her eyes widened. Chuji, look out! She shouted, as a huge, black creature that resembled the Akimichi in his meat tank jutsu form appeared. Chuji turned around just in time to be bowled over by the creature's charge, flying and tumbling into a tree root. Oh! What hit me? He muttered. Chuji shook his head and dodged as the monster charged for him again, and formed hand seals. Buben Baika no Jutsu. Chuji shouted, his arms growing to massive size and slamming down on the beast's head. He crushed it into a cloud of black smoke, but before he could savor his triumph two more appeared. All right. Take this. Nikuden Sensha. He became a giant ball of human flesh once more and rolled at full against the two charging creatures. Sakura ducked as they rammed into each other, bouncing off into the directions they'd come from. Chuji's technique failed with a poof of smoke, leaving him lying dazed against a tree trunk, while his adversaries got back up and began to lumber for him, through slowly. Shikamaru, in the meantime, was finding himself occupied. Kin summoned flying heartless, that resembled small lanterns floating in the air. They were all purple, and fired sonic blasts after him that he was hard-pressed to dodge. His shadow jutsus were little good while he was on the move, and he had to be as the little demons kept swarming him. Man, this is too troublesome. He muttered, jumping to a branch and flipping onto the top, as the flying lantern demons flew under him. He tossed an explosive tag after them and leapt away, a small smirk emerging on his face as the creatures were blown to smithereens. You little punk! I'm going to kill you! Kin shouted, throwing kunai of her own. Shikamaru blocked them, cursing as he spotted Zaku recovering from Ino's attack. Said Kunoichi was occupied with several larger black creatures Dosu had summoned. Shikamaru frowned. Don't know what this'll do, but... He engaged his family's signature jutsu and reached out, grabbing the shadows of a few smaller creatures nearby. They just looked at him and sunk back into the ground, and his shadow lines seemed to swell as they followed them back to him. Crap, this is just not my day, Shikamaru growled, disengaging the jutsu and leaping away as the demons continued to increase in number. Ino, if it's not too much trouble. I've got my own problems, Shikamaru. Deal with it. Ino shrieked back, ducking a swing from a large black creature and blasting a purple, lantern-shaped one with a fire blast. She cursed she was already low on chakra, having to use so many high-level spells in such a short amount of time. Where's Naruto when you need him? Or Sasuke? She muttered in anger and concern. A massive spike of chakra from behind caught her attention. She spun around, eyes widening at the sight. For a moment she was concerned the sound ninja would take advantage of her shift in attention, but a quick check revealed she didn't have to worry. They were just as focused on the dark figure, surrounded by a towering maelstrom of burning, demonic chakra. The figure looked up, red Sharingan eyes blazing, as a smile came over his face. Normally, Ino would have been happy to see a smile on Sasuke's face, but this, combined with the terrifying chakra pressure, bizarre markings spreading across his body like a rash, and frightening, almost insane glint in his eyes. Sasuke-kun, what the heck happened to you? She wondered, clutching her staff more tightly. Sasuke had to admit. He hadn't expected to wake up feeling this good. Hell, part of him thought he'd never wake up again. His promise, once more, falling to the might of the forces opposed to his vengeance. But this, he felt a giggle come up from within him, and he let it out as he continued to look at his hands. Chakra, visible chakra swirled around him in a maelstrom. According to his Sharingan, it was dense, energetic, powerful. Sasuke looked at the broken Shikudo in his hand, one swiftly becoming covered by black stripe-like markings. He grinned. He felt like he could take on and defeat anyone. Instinctively he focused some of his new chakra to his broken blade, and the burning energies took the form of a long, jagged sword. Almost like the wing of a raven, it wavered and changed as though a cross between smoke and feathers. He giggled again, feeling giddy. His thoughts seemed to rush about at random, until they settled on one thing. I want to fight someone. He looked out over the clearing, seeing the demons, and some of his teammates. The unconscious Naruto behind him didn't matter. Naruto couldn't fight, so he had no interest. Sakura. Injured. She was staring at him, eyes and mouth wide, as she crouched near the limp body of Rock Lee. He stared at her, unfamiliar feelings welling up in him. They seemed to be summed up in one word. Mine. Who did that to you, Sakura? He asked, and in an instant he was before her, staring down, smiling. She was staring back at him, shocked, moving slowly, so slowly, but he didn't mind. Everything seemed to be moving so quickly and slowly at the same time, and Sakura was here. Sakura was hurt. Sakura had been hurt. Which meant she had been fighting. Mine? Fight? Mine? Who? He asked again. He heard a laugh. Identified the source. We did, Uchiha. And we're going to do worse to you. Chakra building up in his arms, wind merging with it. Sasuke simply took Sakura's hand and pulled her up, before grabbing Rock Lee and tossing him out of the line of fire, before pulling Sakura away. She was gripping his hand tightly, still staring, eyes wide. He felt more stares. Fight, kill, mine. His blade lashed out and struck through one of the demons circling around. It dissolved, hardly interesting to him. Still, maybe killing more would be interesting. The boy who hurt Sakura wasn't strong enough to be a challenge. What the hell are you? Said boy shouted in disbelief. Sasuke grinned. Hurt Sakura, hurt him, mine, no one hurts mine. He was behind the boy now, blade having moved so quickly that Sasuke barely noticed him screaming as his hand came off. Sasuke kept grinning. Pain to others. This power. It increases when I cause pain. You seemed proud of your hands, Sasuke noted casually, as the sound ninja fell to the ground, gripping his bloody stump in agony. I took one. Shall I take another? Sasuke, stop it. Please. This isn't you. Sakura shouted. Sasuke ignored her, slashing apart another demon as it tried to attack him. Pests. You're not laughing now. Sasuke added. He held the blade up, savored the terror in the eyes of the sound ninja, grinned just that much more. Bastard, what the hell are you doing? Light in the back of his chakra senses. Hope, strength, power. Sasuke grinned and giggled again, turning back to see Naruto stumbling out of the shelter, keyblade in hand. Dead last. Fight me, he stated, holding his new dark blade out in challenge. Okay, this wasn't what I was expecting when I woke up this morning, Naruto decided. The keyblade and his own chakra senses were screaming not right about the chakra now enveloping Sasuke. Not to mention the weapon he now wielded. It resembled a curved bat wing, cruel spines on the inner blade that glistened blood red in the sunlight. The guard of the blade was also wing-like, only pure black and feathered, forming protection for Sasuke's knuckles but only on one side of the hilt. The most prominent feature of the weapon, however, was the circular emblem between blade and guard. It was blood red, with a single black circle in the center and 3 black tadpole-shaped spots swimming around it. It was a perfect Sharingan, though Naruto didn't know this. Is that thing a keyblade too? Naruto thought, disturbed. If it was, it seemed as dark as the Kyuubi blade. And potentially just as powerful. Crap, what am I going to do? The blonde thought frantically as Sasuke advanced, still grinning disturbingly. Pale arms suddenly closed around Sasuke from behind in an embrace, and Sakura's sobs could be heard over the commotion. Sasuke-kun, please. Please, stop. This isn't you. This can't be you. Please. She cried, holding him tightly. Sasuke continued to stare down Naruto, black blade in his hand. The blonde kept his keyblade at the ready should the Uchiha still attack. The dark chakra began to fade, as the black markings began to recede from Sasuke's skin. He collapsed, panting heavily, as his once more broken Chikudo fell from his grasp. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief, and a bigger one when the sound nin dispelled the heartless they'd summoned. Still, he held out his keyblade in challenge if they tried anything. The mummy-like one, his teammates had called him Dosu, stepped forward, sleeve-covered hands raised in a peaceful expression, while Kin tried to stem the bleeding from Zaku's wrist. The handless sound ninja was obviously trying not to cry, but the pain had to be intense. Naruto returned his attention to Dosu, who revealed a scroll. The sound ninja tossed it to Naruto, who caught it with a frown. What's this? Our scroll, Dosu replied. We must get our comrade medical attention. Mark my words, however, Uzumaki Naruto, that we will meet again. You will not be so fortunate, next time, he finished flatly. Naruto narrowed his eyes back. How did you know my name? He asked. Dosu merely smirked and leapt away into the shadows, soon followed by Kin supporting Zaku. Naruto growled. This just didn't feel right. Ugh. groaned someone nearby. He turned and gaped at the downed Chuji. Chuji! Hey! You okay? He called, rushing over and kneeling next to the large shinobi. Naruto was a poor student, true, but since first aid had been taught at the start of the academy he'd recalled a lot of what had been taught. Okay, chakra levels are low but not dangerously. Pulse is steady. And, okay, maybe not much, but Chuji looked alright. He sat up and grimaced, rubbing his head. Ow! What hit me? Naruto? You okay? Chuji asked, looking concerned. Naruto grinned. Good old Chuji. Even when he'd gotten his ass kicked around, he still put others first. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks you guys showing up. What happened? Well, we saw Forehead and Spandex Boy fighting off Sound Ninja, and spotted your chakra signatures, Ino huffed, leaning against her staff demurely. You didn't look like you were in any condition to fight, so we dropped in. Troublesome, Shikamaru mumbled as he walked over. Those summons of theirs were strange. Never seen or heard of anything like that. Ino rolled her eyes. Since when do you pay attention to anything other than clouds and shogi? Shikamaru shrugged. Sometimes it's less troublesome to pay attention, he said, walking over to Chuji. The large-bodied genin smiled happily, and Naruto got up to check on the rest of the Leaf Ninja. He was treated to the rather amusing sight of Tenten shaking the hell out of Lee. You idiot! You have any idea how long we've been looking for you? And why the hell did you go off on your own anyway? The weapons specialist demanded. Lee, though spinny-eyed, managed a coherent response. I had to. Save Sakura-chan, Tenten-san. I could not abandon her to such an unyouthful fate. Above on a tree branch, Hyuga Niji snorted. He clearly looked impatient and shot Naruto a glare, as though he were responsible for the time his team was wasting. Naruto just smirked back and looked over at Sakura and Sasuke. Sakura-chan, you okay? The pink-haired girl nodded, fussing over Sasuke, who looked rather annoyed about it. Ino walked over and began fussing as well, which led the two kunoichi to arguing a bit. Leave Sasuke-kun alone, Ino pig. Haven't I earned some time with him, Forehead? I did save you and him, after all. Sasuke's grunt and glare at that caused her to quickly add. Not that you need saving, Sasuke-kun. But Forehead here, she's so helpless. Look at your hair. Sakura's hand went up to her messily shorn locks, and she winced, as though Sasuke would find her hideous now. With a sigh, Ino stood up, took a kunai, and sat behind Sakura. The pink-haired girl blinked. Ha, look, I'll just fix up your hair, okay? She said, trimming Sakura's pink locks carefully. Sasuke got up, stubbornly, and walked away, looking at Naruto with a demanding look on his face. Our gear? He asked. Naruto cocked his head to the tree hollow, and Sasuke grunted, stalking over. The blonde rolled his eyes. Even after all that, he's still got that stick up his ass. Hey Naruto. The blonde looked up at Tenten, who had left Lee alone and now approached him. Yeah Tenten? Naruto asked, giving her a small smile. She actually seemed to blush, but pressed on. That explosion yesterday. What happened there? Naruto laughed uneasily. Well. Let's just say a new move of mine didn't work out exactly as I'd planned. Are you kidding? We could feel it from a mile away. Tenten emphasized. Just what kind of move was it anyway? Because if that was how it was when it wasn't working out as planned, then. She grinned and shrugged a bit. Naruto grinned back nervously. Well. If I ever manage to do it again, you'll be the first to know, heh. Sakura walked over, finishing wrapping her forearms in bandages. She held up a heaven scroll happily. Hey Naruto, Ino Pig's willing to trade us the scroll we needed for the extra earth scroll we got from the Sound Ninja. Alright. Third stage, here we come. Naruto crowed, handing it over. Just try not to blow up any more parts of the forest again, Naruto, Ino quipped dryly. Sasuke, now with his gear back on his pack, shot Naruto a glare to which the blonde just shrugged. Considering how Sasuke had acted while in that weird mode. With that dark blade. He didn't want to risk provoking the Uchiha into summoning it again. At least, not until I'm strong enough to fight him off, he added mentally, tightening the grip on his keyblade. Yeah, same to you Firebug, he returned to Ino with a smirk. The blonde stuck her tongue out and headed out, Shikamaru following with a sigh and a troublesome, while Chuji bounced after. Ten, Lee, let's go, Niji commanded. Ten winked at Naruto. I'll see you at the tower, Naruto-kun, she teased, before leaping off. The blonde couldn't help but blush just a bit at that. Lee staggered afterwards, giving Sakura a grin and thumbs up. OSSU. I will see you soon, Sakura-san. Naruto-san, Sasuke-san, I look forward to meeting you in the next part of the exam. With that, he leapt off after his team into the trees. Man, is that guy weird, Sakura noted, shaking her head. Though Naruto saw the small smile on her face as she said it. Come on, Sasuke said irritably. If we move at full speed we make it to the tower before nightfall. He jumped up into the foliage and took off. Naruto paused and shot a grin at Sakura. She frowned and narrowed her eyes at him. What? I saw you. Smiling at Lee. Someone getting over her obsession with emo boys? Shut up, Naruto. She bawled, jumping off after the Uchiha. Naruto sighed and rolled his eyes. Well, it's a start, he decided. Either she wises up, or the bastard gets wise. Sure, Sasuke was an asshole, but when someone puts their life on the line for you, they kind of grow on you. Even if they were arrogant clan heirs with sticks up their butts. And Sakura, well. He just wanted her happy. He saw that she desperately needed someone to either make her happy, or help her find a way to it herself, and Naruto hoped he could be that person. Ah damn it, I'm getting all mushy and introspective. Again, he noted in disgust. He glared at the Keyblade. This is all your fault, you know. Not getting an immediate response, the boy huffed before moving on. He leaped after his comrades, switching his thoughts to the tower, and third part of the exam to come. Trying to keep his thoughts off Sasuke's transformation, and that dark blade that was frighteningly familiar. Not too far away, Kabuto's team had caught up with him. The medic ninja was looking into the distance as his comrades landed on the branch he stood on, flanking Kabuto on both sides. You have the scrolls? He asked. Misumi nodded. Took M off a mist team and a stone team. Small fry, he said flatly. Yoroi snorted. The mist ones were trying to set up an ambush near the tower with a pathetic genjutsu. Easy pickings. As for the stone. Fey. Insects. Good, Kabuto spoke. We should find Zaka's team. They suffered rather severe injuries fighting Sasuke-kun. So, the Uchiha survived? Yoroi asked. Kabuto nodded, as did the key-bearer. Orochimaru will be pleased. He crouched. Come, we have a limited amount of time before gangrene sets in. Yoroi and Misumi both smirked behind their masks at the implication, and followed Kabuto. One of those hotshot genin punks being in pain never got old. They were not disappointed. Ugh! God damn it, Kabuto, you shit. Couldn't have gotten here sooner? Zaka demanded, cradling what was left of his hand. Kin stood back a ways, eyeing Kabuto warily, while Dosu crouched near their injured teammate. You can help him, I presume, Dosu spoke quietly. Kabuto smirked and knelt, pulling out a scroll from his pack. Releasing its seal in a burst of smoke, the medic produced an elegant, metallic hand. Zaka gazed at it in wonder, even as Kabuto unwrapped the crude bandages around his stump. This is but one of a few experimental replacement limbs I have been working on. And carrying with me, Kabuto explained at Dosu's look of suspicion. Even Kabuto wasn't good enough to predict this happening. Force some of your chakra into it, and it will bind automatically with your flesh. Zaka did so, directing some of the energy into his wrist and screaming in agony as it glowed. Kabuto grabbed Zaka's wrist and held him still, forcing some of his own healing chakra into his arm. Zaka bit his lip and squelched his screams, as the pain gradually subsided. He experimentally flexed his new metal fingers, and smiled as they responded to his will. This hand is very strong. Direct sufficient chakra into it and you can punch through solid marble. But be warned, do not overexert yourself. You may burn all of your chakra if you are careless, Kabuto stated flatly. Zaka nodded, as Kabuto stood up and looked at the whole team. Now then. Orochimaru will want to hear how you use the Heartless in battle. I will take your report to him. So, why don't you start at the beginning? That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.